Chapter 379. Under this ostrich logistics courier's strange gaze, Lin Yuan accepted the express delivery with some confusion. Then the ostrich logistics courier rode on his flying fei, as if he was fleeing, and quickly left within 500 meters of the return from faraway manor. Lin Yuan looked at the gold ingredients in the silver fei storage box he had bought from Big Brother Feng. He lowered his head and sniffed the smell on his clothes in disgust. Lin Yuan only felt his stomach churn again, and he hurriedly used Morbius' calm mind on himself. Only then did it prevent Lin Yuan from spitting out a parabola from his mouth. Since Lin Yuan had been standing against the wind in the open space outside the manor, his clothes were also stained with the fishy smell of the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. The fishy smell of the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh lasted much longer than those perfumes. If he did not wash it a few times, he would not be able to get rid of this fishy smell. Lin Yuan hurriedly took this silver fei storage box's gold ingredients back into the manor and placed it on the completely jade-textured wood table. Then he went upstairs to take a shower and change his clothes. After washing the stinky clothes he had just changed out of, he felt that he should really change his name to Lin Tossing. Lin Yuan felt that he should really change his name to Lin Tossing. He had jumped into the artificial lake once tonight, cleaned the courtyard for 3 hours, taken 2 showers and changed his clothes twice. If this was not Lin Tossing, what would it be? With that thought, Lin Yuan suddenly paused. It seemed that he could not call himself Lin Tossing or Big Brother Bath. Lin Yuan's biological clock had been changed during this period. Every day, he would go to bed before 11 o'clock. Lin Yuan looked at the time and found that it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. However, Lin Yuan was no longer sleepy because of the fishy smell of the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. He simply went downstairs and took the gold ingredients in the silver fei storage box to the kitchen. They were placed in categories on the huge shelves in the kitchen that almost occupied one wall. After placing these gold ingredients, Lin Yuan carefully washed his hands before returning to his room. After returning to his room, he thought of the beeswax box that Mystic Moon had brought for his master, the Moon Empress. He summoned the small beeswax box from his amber button-shaped diamond fei storage box. Lin Yuan leaned on the bed and opened the beeswax box. Lin Yuan sat up on the bed. There were 3 items in the small beeswax box. It was a hollowed-out pendant made of flowing cloud beeswax. The pendant looked very exquisite. This pendant was engraved with layers upon layers of osmanthus flower patterns. It seemed to be filled with a kind of pure osmanthus aura. Layers of osmanthus flowers seemed to grow in the shade of the tree. There was a small groove above the pendant. Lin Yuan looked at the size of the groove and casually flipped it over. He took out the extreme token that he had placed in the spirit lock spatial zone. This extreme token contained the Moon Empress Moonlight domain once. It was also the trump card that the Moon Empress had left for him in addition to the Path Protector, the Mother of Bloodbath. The Moonlight domain sealed by the extreme token could not only protect him, but also allow him to launch a killing blow at a necessary moment. This extreme token could be embedded in the hollowed-out pendant made of flowing cloud beeswax. Lin Yuan looked at the groove where the extreme token was embedded in the flowing cloud beeswax pendant and found that it fit perfectly. A crescent moon pattern was revealed from the hollowed-out hole of the flowing cloud beeswax pendant. It made the osmanthus flower pattern on the pendant look like an osmanthus flower growing peacefully under the moonlight. There was a kind of osmanthus leaves the evening color, and the curtain shadows the faint autumn light. The decadent wind has yet to fall, and the night has yet to end. There was no struggle and silence, but it had invisibly become the most beautiful scenery under the moon. There was no need for light green and light red. It was naturally first-rate among flowers. Lin Yuan did not know why he suddenly thought of this poem. This poem could be considered as a form of encouragement. Lin Yuan looked at the flowing cloud beeswax pendant again and stood up. He found a black rope and threaded it through the hole of the flowing cloud beeswax pendant before hanging it around his neck. Then, he put the flowing cloud beeswax pendant on his neck into his close-fitting clothes. It was next to his chest. The flowing cloud beeswax pendant was made of a kind of spiritual material that could quickly conduct spiritual power and was very sensitive to spiritual power. After placing the extreme token in the pendant, Lin Yuan only needed to circulate the spiritual power in his body slightly. He injected his spiritual power into the flowing cloud beeswax pendant. Then, the extreme token in the pendant would immediately activate and release the moonlight domain sealed in the extreme token. He looked at the 3 star-shaped stamens on the osmanthus flower engraved on the extreme token. Lin Yuan immediately recognized that this was the silver stamen gold luster cassia. This pendant should have been carved by his master, the Moon Empress, for him. As for the other 2 things in the amber box, one of them was a light green liquid in a crystal bottle. Lin Yuan took the crystal bottle and saw a line of words engraved on the bottle's wall. Disciple, that source type item is a spatial source type item. This bottle of spirit liquid is spirit liquid with hollow crystal shellfish shell powder added. As for how to use the spirit liquid in this bottle and that source type item, just take it as master testing you. Looking at the words on the bottle, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his master, the Moon Empress, wanted to give him something. She even wanted to find a reason for his independence. This made Lin Yuan feel very ashamed. For the first time, Lin Yuan felt that he was a little too independent. However, if he wanted to make a career, he could not rely on his master, the Moon Empress. He could rely on his master for a lifetime. As for the Moon Empress test, as long as a Class 2 creation master carefully studied it, they would definitely be able to see how to contract a source-type item. Even if they could not see the effect of the source-type item after contracting, they would definitely be able to see how to contract a source-type item. At a glance, the light green spirit liquid in the bottle was related to the contract method of this source-type item. As long as he knew how to contract a spatial source-type item, he would naturally know how to use the light green spirit liquid. His master, the Moon Empress, had always known that he was a Class 2 creation master, so this was not considered a test at all. Lin Yuan opened the bottle stopper of the light green spirit liquid. The moment he opened the bottle stopper of the light green spirit liquid, a wave of pure spirit chi mixed with medicinal properties rushed toward his face. Today's first ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 380. Lin Yuan found that the light green spirit liquid in this bottle contained an extremely high concentration of spirit chi. However, in comparison, it was still a little less pure and concentrated than the spirit chi in his spirit lock spatial zone. Although the concentration of spirit chi in this bottle of light green spirit liquid was not as concentrated as in his spirit lock spatial zone. However, the majestic medicinal properties contained in it were something that Lin Yuan could not produce no matter what. The majestic medicinal properties floated out of the bottle mouth. It made Lin Yuan feel as though the space in front of him was torn and distorted by the medicinal properties containing spatial energy in the bottle. This medicinal properties containing spatial energy should be the result of adding hollow crystal shellfish shell powder in this spirit liquid. Speaking of hollow crystal shellfish, it was a famous existence in the Radiance Federation. A fey like the hollow crystal shellfish was the reason why Ostrich Logistics could deliver goods within 3 hours no matter where they were. Ostrich Logistics claimed that it had cultivated the hollow crystal shellfish. It could be considered a core fey for Ostrich Logistics to settle down. At the same time, Ostrich Logistics had extremely strict control over the hollow crystal shellfish it had cultivated, and would not allow them to flow outside of Ostrich Logistics. Lin Yuan had also thought about Ostrich Logistics' hollow crystal shellfish, but he had never had a way. This bottle of light green spirit liquid contained Ostrich Logistics' treasure, the hollow crystal shellfish shell powder. Given Ostrich Logistics' level of control over the hollow crystal shellfish, probably only experts at the level of his master, the Moon Empress. Only then could he get the hollow crystal shellfish shell from a semi-official faction like Ostrich Logistics. Then Lin Yuan looked at the third item in this beeswax box. This third item was the spatial source type that his master, the Moon Empress, had mentioned. There were hundreds of types of source type items announced in the Radiance Federation, but none of them were spatial source type. However, this did not mean that spatial source type items did not exist. On the contrary, as long as spatial source type items appeared, they would be fought over by the major factions. Spatial source-type items had always been the rarest of all source-type items. At the same time, there were many types of spatial source-type items. Some were good at fighting, some were good at defense, and some had special functions. Some factions even compared one of the spatial source-type items with the island whale. At one point, this specific spatial source-type item was elevated to the level of a strategic treasure. This specific spatial source-type item was raised to a strategic-level treasure by the major factions. This was because the existence of such a specific spatial source-type item was equivalent to obtaining the qualifications for spatial teleportation. The spatial source-type life form in front of him was precisely this kind of spatial source-type life form that could teleport. It could be said that spatial source-type items that could teleport were not as precious as the island whale. However, if one were to take it seriously, it wouldn't be any less useful than the island whale. If a force could obtain the ability to teleport, this meant that they could ignore the hindrance caused by distance. It was conceivable how important spatial source-type items were to the development of a faction. This kind of spatial source-type life form that could carry out spatial teleportation was something that he could not obtain with his current foundation. Lin Yuan had been able to exchange for a strategic class treasure, like the floating island whale with Gao Feng, because the Gao family had spent a lot of resources, but had not been able to hatch it. At the same time, due to the difference in the crystal eggshells of the floating island whale and the island whale, the Gao family regarded the unhatched floating island whale as a product of a failed mutation. Such a floating island whale was useless to the Gao family and would consume a lot of the family's resources instead. However, under such circumstances, Lin Yuan still took out 3 bronze/epic phase to exchange. Only then did he exchange for the floating island whale, which had been regarded as trash by the Gao family. One of the bronze/epic phase that Lin Yuan had exchanged for was the yellow spring lily, which was rare among bronze/epic phase. Only then did he exchange for the floating island whale, which was useless to the Gao family, from Gao Feng. It could be seen how much importance the major factions attached to the degree of control of strategic class treasures. Lin Yuan knew that if his teacher, the Moon Empress, had not given him this spatial source-type item that could teleport, with Lin Yuan's current resources and foundation, even if he took out a bronze/legend Fei to exchange for it, he would not be able to exchange for a spatial source-type item that could teleport. After all, no matter how precious a bronze/legend Fei was, it could only allow a spirit chi professional to have a bronze/fantasy breed Fei. However, a spatial source-type item that could teleport was a strategic class treasure that could benefit a faction and allow it to develop rapidly. Even if Lin Yuan used many bronze/legend Feis to exchange for it, how could Lin Yuan let this bronze/legend Fei easily flow into the market? Lin Yuan had been using true data to check this source-type item. This source-type item was like a transparent glass ball. But if one calmed down and observed carefully, they would be able to see it. It was a transparent glass ball, and there seemed to be something transparent floating inside it. This source-type item was called the ethereal jellyfish. The way to contract with the ethereal jellyfish required the transparent outer shell to be broken. Then, it would be fed with a spirit fluid that was highly mixed with spatial energy and contained a high concentration of spirit chi within 1 minute. If it was not fed with a specific spirit fluid for more than 1 minute, the ethereal jellyfish would die. When the ethereal jellyfish was fed to normal I/normal, then, it would drip a large amount of the contractor's blood and let the blood stimulate the ethereal jellyfish. It would cause the ethereal jellyfish to be stimulated by the blood and spit out all 3 gastric sacs in its body. At that moment, it would inject a large amount of the contractor's blood into the ethereal jellyfish. It would use the blood to help the ethereal jellyfish grow 3 gastric sacs again. At that moment, the ethereal jellyfish's contract would be considered successful. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's contract method displayed under true data and could not help but feel that this source-type lifeform's contract method was really strange. Lin Yuan used his hand to touch it, which was still in this glass-like sphere. The ethereal jellyfish, whose physical body could not be seen, muttered softly. With this ethereal jellyfish, I can teleport. Then, the Sky City's white-clothed followers' plan can also start to be implemented. With that thought, a glint flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. From now on, Sky City would not only collect resources, it would also develop its military force. Yesterday's second update, seeking recommendation votes tomorrow. I will try to finish updating the 4 chapters before 8 p.m. End of this chapter. Chapter 381. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to contract this source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, he picked up the bottle that contained the light green spirit fluid. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized the difficulty of contracting the ethereal jellyfish. It was the kind of spirit fluid that was highly mixed with spatial energy and contained a high concentration of spirit qi. In a sense, it was the privilege of Class 5 creation masters. Only Class 5 creation masters could mix the spirit qi concentration in the spirit fluid to such a degree. Even Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters might be able to use the hollow crystal shellfish's powder to perfectly fuse with the spirit fluid and release the spatial energy in the hollow crystal shellfish. However, it was impossible to achieve the concentration of spirit qi in this bottle of light green spirit fluid. It also meant that this source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, could only be contracted with the help of a Class 5 creation master. This source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish's contract method, might not have a high requirement for the contractor, but it had a high requirement for soft power. First, one had to find a Class 5 creation master, and the Class 5 creation master had to be willing to help. In this era, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to find a Class 4 creation master. It was imaginable that even if a faction obtained this strategic treasure and used it to rapidly develop their faction, they would only be able to watch anxiously. They would not be able to form a contract with this ethereal jellyfish and be anxious. Apart from that, this ethereal jellyfish had a very special point. After a successful contract, the ethereal jellyfish's evolution path was a little similar to the acid corrosion queen bee. After the ethereal jellyfish was contracted, it was unable to fuse with the contractor's comprehended willpower rune. The source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, could only be evolved to Diamond X/Legend. It had to comprehend the willpower rune from heaven and earth to evolve into a fantasy breed. This made the ethereal jellyfish evolve into a fantasy breed no different from a wild fae. In fact, the ethereal jellyfish's situation wasn't bad for Lin Yuan. In fact, it was greatly beneficial. As Lin Yuan contracted more and more faes, even with Lin Yuan's comprehension ability, the willpower runes he comprehended were far from the speed of contracting faes and source-type life forms. Genius, Blackie, and the flash purple butterfly still didn't have a suitable willpower rune. However, the ethereal jellyfish did not need to fuse with willpower runes. Instead, it needed to comprehend willpower runes from the heaven and earth itself. This would greatly reduce the pressure on him to use the willpower rune. It was very difficult for phase and source-type life forms to comprehend willpower runes on their own. However, as long as the Fae or source-type life form could reach the legend quality as soon as possible, the legend quality would increase. The chances of a Fae or source-type life form possessing a willpower rune would also be higher. As for the source-type ethereal jellyfish, he could rely on his own strength to let the ethereal jellyfish reach legend at bronze. This would undoubtedly increase the chances of the ethereal jellyfish comprehending the willpower rune. As long as the ethereal jellyfish reached diamond rank 10, everything would be fine. The ethereal jellyfish was a source-type life form that could teleport. After becoming a fantasy breed, the ethereal jellyfish obtained a new exclusive skill that would greatly enhance its teleportation ability. However, even if the ethereal jellyfish did not evolve into a fantasy breed, as long as its level was high enough, it could perform long-distance teleportation. That was enough for Lin Yuan. He took the glass ball-shaped source-type, ethereal jellyfish into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. When Lin Yuan entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he found that everything was quiet. Chimey had been sleeping on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Only 1/3 of the mid-grade strange flames sealed in the 130 leaves of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree had yet to be digested and absorbed. Lin Yuan sensed the state of Chimy's body. Chimy should not have to wait for the remaining 1/3 of the strange flames to be completely absorbed before waking up. At the same time, its quality would increase from Fantasy I to Fantasy II. As for the gray crane species Fei Gray, it was now lying on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus and sleeping soundly. During this period of time, Gray had eaten a lot of tangfish and had plenty of nutrients. In addition, it was nourished by the massive and pure spirit qi in the spirit lock spatial zone, which was constantly repairing its genetic model. At that moment, Gray was visibly stronger than before. He was no longer as skinny as he was before. While Gray was becoming stronger, a lot of its gray feathers had also fallen off. At the bottom of the fallen gray feathers, a layer of fluff that was whiter than snow grew. This layer of snow-white fluff was very soft and dense. Lin Yuan believed that it would not take long for snow-white feathers to grow out of this layer of snow-white fluff. It could be seen from the bottom layer of fluff that was whiter than snow. Gray should be a crane species Fei with white feathers. The spirit lock spatial zone's butler, the wind speed rapid antelope, was also lying on the side of the pure land of bliss. It might be sleeping in an uncomfortable position, but it even shook its small head in a daze and nudged the white gravel on the pure land of bliss before turning over. This turn, the wind speed rapid antelope's buttocks, which Lin Yuan had shaved into a heart-shaped shape, were facing Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan touched his nose and felt the wind speed rapid antelope's teasing love with its buttocks. Then, Lin Yuan started to work on this source-type ethereal jellyfish on the workbench. Lin Yuan first separated a piece of black feather, made of the day and night spirit silver, from the source sand. Then, he used this black feather to repeatedly knock on the glass-like shell on the ethereal jellyfish's surface. After a few repetitive knocks, the glass-like shell cracked. He stretched out his hand and pressed hard on the crack. The glass shell of the ethereal jellyfish was smashed into pieces. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized something. It turned out that these were the transparent ones in the glass-like shell. What looks like a liquid is not water. It was the body of the ethereal jellyfish. It turned out that the beating thing was the heart of the ethereal jellyfish. He hurriedly poured the light green spirit liquid that contained rich spirit qi and majestic spatial energy on the ethereal jellyfish. Lin Yuan might have used spiritual ingredients to induce the elemental shellfish to mutate before, but he had never used them before. It allowed the elemental shellfish to transform into elemental shellfish of different attributes, according to the spirit materials of different attributes. However, in order to induce the mutation of the elemental shellfish, one only needed to use the aura of the spirit material itself to touch the pearl in the depths of the elemental shellfish multiple times. However, the spatial energy required by the ethereal jellyfish was completely mixed with the spirit liquid. This allowed the majestic spatial energy and pure spiritual energy to merge into one, perfectly blending with each other in the spirit liquid. If Lin Yuan had to take out such a huge amount of pure spirit qi, he could do it. However, it was impossible for him to fuse such a huge amount of spirit qi and majestic spatial energy. Making up for yesterday's third chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 382. Lin Yuan was very careful. He only dripped 1 drop of the light green spirit liquid on the ethereal jellyfish's body. Soon, Lin Yuan realized that the light green spirit liquid would vanish the moment it landed on the ethereal jellyfish's body. It was obvious that the ethereal jellyfish had absorbed the light green spirit liquid. However, there were no changes to the ethereal jellyfish after absorbing the light green spirit liquid. Lin Yuan continued to pour 1 drop of the light green spirit liquid at a time, and repeated the process many times. When he poured 30 drops of the light green spirit liquid, Lin Yuan realized that there were 3 places in the ethereal jellyfish's body that had no color at all. 3 places in the ethereal jellyfish's body had become indistinct light green. The ethereal jellyfish's body was still in a transparent state. One could only see the ethereal jellyfish's indistinct beating heart in the air. Finally, Lin Yuan poured half a bottle of the light green spirit liquid into the ethereal jellyfish. The ethereal jellyfish still had no intention of spitting out the gastric pouches. However, the 3 light green spots in the ethereal jellyfish's body had become much bigger. It seemed like these 3 light green spots were the ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches. Finally, when Lin Yuan poured out all the light green spirit liquid in the bottle, the ethereal jellyfish suddenly moved violently. The 3 constantly growing light green gastric pouches seemed to be stimulating the ethereal jellyfish's body. The ethereal jellyfish struggled to squirm its body and quickly spat out the 3 light green gastric pouches. After spitting out the 3 light green gastric pouches, the ethereal jellyfish seemed to have become weak and floated in the air. The heart that was faintly discernible in the air was beating at a much slower rate. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan ignored the 3 light green gastric pouches that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out. Instead, he took the black feather that was formed from the day and night spirit silver, from the source sand, that he had used before. Lin Yuan took the black feather and ruthlessly cut his palm. The moment Lin Yuan's palm was cut by the black feather, warm blood flowed through his palm and dripped onto the ethereal jellyfish's body. Immediately after, the ethereal jellyfish, which was originally in the air, absorbed Lin Yuan's blood into its body. Perhaps due to the loss of its stomach, the ethereal jellyfish's body was dyed red after absorbing Lin Yuan's blood. At this moment, the ethereal jellyfish was in midair, and its entire body had turned light red. Only now did Lin Yuan see the ethereal jellyfish's full appearance. At this moment, the normal level 1 normal ethereal jellyfish looked no different from the most common jellyfish in the sea. Its membrane-like body was wriggling slowly, and there were 20 to 30 tentacles that the jellyfish used to filter its food. He gently used his hand to touch these filtering tentacles, and found that they were very soft to the touch. The exhausted ethereal jellyfish seemed to have regained its vitality with the injection of Lin Yuan's blood. His body, which looked like a thin film, suddenly became illusory, but then it became real again. The ethereal jellyfish wriggled in midair, looking as if it was shuttling back and forth in space. Every time it changed between reality and illusion, it would cause bursts of spatial energy fluctuations. As more and more of his blood was absorbed by the ethereal jellyfish, Lin Yuan noticed that most of the blood that dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body was concentrated at its heart. The ethereal jellyfish's heart had become the darkest and reddest part of the ethereal jellyfish. However, Lin Yuan had already donated blood for 5 minutes. However, he realized that even after he had donated blood for 5 minutes, the ethereal jellyfish still did not seem to be full. The ethereal jellyfish was still greedily absorbing the blood that gushed out of his palm. Until now, the ethereal jellyfish's 3 stomach sacs had yet to regenerate. The speed at which blood flowed out of Lin Yuan's palm had become much slower. Due to the large amount of blood loss, Lin Yuan's arm had become numb. Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and used the day and night spirit silver feather to cut his other palm. This time, a large amount of blood dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body. The moment the new blood dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body, Lin Yuan realized that he could already connect with it. In the spiritual spatial zone, he could already establish a connection with the ethereal jellyfish. At the same time, the 3 stomach sacs that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out grew out again. However, the ethereal jellyfish's 3 stomach sacs were still pale red in color. As it floated in the air, it emitted a pale red radiance. It was just like a big lantern and looked very festive. However, Lin Yuan was a little speechless. If he had known this would happen, he would not have cut open his other palm as well. The blood from that hand was more than enough. Lin Yuan felt that he was really a heartless man to actually give himself an extra cut. At that moment, the jasmine lily on Lin Yuan's workbench rose into a ball of green light and landed on Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan's palm was visibly restored to its original state. Lin Yuan blinked his eyes. It seemed like not all the fays in the spirit lock spatial zone were asleep. At least, the jasmine lily was still awake. However, even if the jasmine lily was awake, Lin Yuan would not be able to see it. Or rather, as a plant species fae, the jasmine lily did not sleep at all. After experiencing the weakness of excessive blood loss, Lin Yuan could completely feel how difficult it was for Zhang Xiaobai to raise a leech. Lin Yuan felt that he should also soak wolfberries in a thermos flask in the future and start a healthy life. Fortunately, the jasmine lily's ability heal could recover the lost vitality. It allowed Lin Yuan to replenish the lost blood in a short period of time. Therefore, Lin Yuan only experienced the feeling of anemia for a few minutes before returning to normal. The ethereal jellyfish had become Lin Yuan's contracted fae. Lin Yuan tried to communicate with the ethereal jellyfish, but he realized that its mind was in a state of chaos. It did not even have a very basic consciousness, and it was impossible to communicate. According to the ethereal jellyfish's unclear consciousness, Lin Yuan's thought was that he was the ethereal jellyfish's contractor, and all the ethereal jellyfish liked to float around him. It was because the ethereal jellyfish's chaotic feeling made it very safe to float around him. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. It seemed like this ethereal jellyfish had the lowest intelligence among all of his fays. After forming the contract with the ethereal jellyfish, Lin Yuan did not leave the spirit lock spatial zone. Instead, he started to enhance the ethereal jellyfish. He continued to enhance the ethereal jellyfish to elite/epic. Lin Yuan planned to choose the most useful exclusive skill among the 3 exclusive skills that would appear when the ethereal jellyfish reached bronze. Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 383. Just as he was planning to enhance the ethereal jellyfish to bronze, the ethereal jellyfish suddenly appeared. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that the 3 light green gastric pouches that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out earlier had turned into light green crystals. These 3 light green crystals contain boundless spatial energy. Although Lin Yuan did not know what use the ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches had turned into light green crystals, just by looking at the boundless spatial energy within them, they should be considered supreme-grade spatial spiritual ingredients. However, just by looking at the boundless spatial energy within these light green crystals, it was clear that these light green crystals formed from the 3 gastric sacs were extremely high-quality spatial attribute spirit materials. He placed the 3 ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches into the brocade box. Then he carefully stored the brocade box into his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan carefully stored the brocade box into his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Then, he let the light red ethereal jellyfish land on his palm. The ethereal jellyfish's 2 tentacles rested on both sides of Lin Yuan's palm. It was like Little Red Riding Hood with a red wig. With that thought in mind, Lin Yuan felt that his idea was a little dangerous. He released pure spirit chi into the ethereal jellyfish's body. Soon, the ethereal jellyfish broke through the barrier of Elite X/Epic. It became a Bronze I/Normal Source-type life form. At that moment, 3 exclusive skills appeared on the ethereal jellyfish. Lin Yuan did not immediately observe the 3 new exclusive skills and choose one of them. Instead, he took a closer look at the Bronze I ethereal jellyfish's abilities. Fey name: Ethereal jellyfish Fey species. Whisker jellyfish/floating jellyfish Fey grade. Bronze 1/10. Fey type: Spatial Fey quality. Normal abilities: Frowny face tentacle node. By breaking off the tentacles, the broken tentacles will be treated as a spatial node. Node teleportation. By sensing the spatial node, teleport to a designated spatial node. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's normal ability, tentacle node, and elite ability, node teleportation. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that this source-type ethereal jellyfish could already teleport when it was at bronze. Previously, when Lin Yuan and the Moon Empress were having a question-and-answer session, the Moon Empress had mentioned this. Under normal circumstances, it was a spatial source-type life form that could teleport. Usually, when there were 4 skills in the gold grade, there would be a teleportation system. But now the ethereal jellyfish had become a teleportation system at the bronze stage. Even though the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system was only the most basic one, the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system still existed. However, every time the ethereal jellyfish evolved, The skills that appeared would enrich the ethereal jellyfish's system. However, he did not know how far the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation range was. As for the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation range, he still needed to experiment before he could accurately know. However, it was clear that this was not the best time to experiment with the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle nodes and node teleportation. After looking at the ethereal jellyfish's abilities, he had a rough understanding of its teleportation mechanism. The ethereal jellyfish used its tentacles as space nodes and fused the broken tentacles into space as a spatial marker. Then the ethereal jellyfish would find the spatial mark and teleport. After understanding the space jellyfish's two current skills, Lin Yuan started to look at the three exclusive skills. Among the ethereal jellyfish's three exclusive skills, the first was excess teleportation. Excess teleportation increased the number of targets that can be teleported within a certain range at the spatial node. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw this exclusive skill. As the ethereal jellyfish's contractor, Lin Yuan knew that it could not only teleport one target at a time. As the ethereal jellyfish's grade increased, the number of teleportation targets would also keep increasing. However, the number of teleportation targets that the ethereal jellyfish could teleport was still limited. For example, given the ethereal jellyfish's current bronze eye strength, it was already very difficult for it to teleport Lin Yuan alone. It could not teleport another person at all. The excessive teleportation directly turned the limited teleportation number of the ethereal jellyfish into a true mass teleportation. It could allow the ethereal jellyfish to teleport multiple targets at once. This exclusive skill, excess teleportation, increased the ethereal jellyfish's spatial teleportation functionality. This made Lin Yuan very surprised. With this exclusive skill, even if he did not have the other two exclusive skills to choose from, he could still use it. Lin Yuan felt that he could accept it gladly. However, he still checked the other two exclusive skills. When he saw the second exclusive skill, Lin Yuan first nodded, and then shook his head. Firm node. Strengthen the spatial node's strength, and extend the spatial node's teleportation distance. The second exclusive skill, firm node, could extend the teleportation distance and allow the ethereal jellyfish to teleport targets further. However, the ethereal jellyfish could not teleport too many things at once. No matter how far it could teleport, it could not compare to the first exclusive skill, excess teleportation. The effect of adding multiple teleportation targets was better. However, when Lin Yuan saw the third exclusive skill, he slapped his thigh. Lin Yuan slapped his thigh and chose the third exclusive skill without hesitation. Space tunnel. Fix the formation of a special long-distance spatial tunnel by breaking off a large number of tentacles and fusing them into space. When there are 3 long-distance spatial tunnels, each time one is cancelled, a new one can only be set up. The third exclusive skill, space tunnel, allowed Lin Yuan to set up 3 spatial tunnels. It was the same as setting up a spatial tunnel that could always exist within a certain distance. Although choosing these 3 spatial tunnels sacrificed the ethereal jellyfish's ability to teleport to multiple targets or ultra-long distance. However, the strategic significance of space tunnel was clearly higher than the exclusive skills, excess teleportation and firm node. If Lin Yuan's floating island whale rose into the sky in the future and built a sky city on its back, the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, space tunnel, could directly connect Lin Yuan to a bridge from the ground to the sky city on the floating island whale's back. Previously, Lin Yuan had also thought that when the floating island whale floated into the sky, if he did not let it land, if his private faction members, including himself, wanted to get on the floating island whale's back with the help of a flying fae that could fly high into the sky. If that was the case, the floating island whale and the sky city on its back would be discovered by people with ulterior motives. They would find the floating island whale's existence when the flying fae flew toward it. However, with the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, space tunnel, on the one hand, it could enhance the convenience of transportation between the floating island whale and the ground. On the other hand, it could also make the floating island whale hidden in the clouds truly untouchable like a floating cloud. Yesterday's second night. End of this chapter. Chapter 384. It could be seen from this exclusive skill, space tunnel. To the major factions, spatial source-type items that could teleport were of great strategic significance. Or rather, it could be said that Lin Yuan's ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, space tunnel, was very important to his faction Sky City. Lin Yuan looked at the bronze eye/normal ethereal jellyfish. He decided to go into seclusion for the next few days. He planned to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish to legend at bronze before upgrading it to silver. As for upgrading the ethereal jellyfish to gold, it would take too long. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry. There was less than a month before the new year. He could not keep going into seclusion to enhance the ethereal jellyfish before the new year. Therefore, he planned to wait until after the new year to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish to gold. Looking at the few little fellows that were still sleeping in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan felt a little sleepy. He did not immediately enhance the ethereal jellyfish. Instead, he exited the Spirit Lock spatial zone. He had to have a good sleep before working hard. It would not be too late to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish's quality and grade after he received Gao Feng's express delivery and handed it to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan did not plan to use spirit chi crystals to enhance the ethereal jellyfish this time. This was because the spirit chi crystals had other uses for him. Lin Yuan once again used the flower brocade pearls to exchange for strange flames in his Star Web store. This was to let Chimy's quality be upgraded to Fantasy 3 before he took the Radiance 100 sequence test and complete its bloodline evolution. At that time, Lin Yuan could use the Spirit Chi crystals to upgrade Chimy's grade from Silver Eye to Gold Eye. He would let Chimy become a Gold Eye/Fantasy 3 Fae. At that time, Chimy, which had undergone a bloodline transformation, would be Lin Yuan's trump card to face all the challenges in the test. The next morning, Lin Yuan received the gold Fae storage box that Gao Feng had mailed through Ostrich Logistics at the entrance of his mansion. After receiving the gold Fae storage box, Lin Yuan called Gao Feng to inform him. The gold Fae storage box contained the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards and blueprints that Gao Feng had sent over. After all, the items that Gao Feng had mailed were truly valuable. Even if Lin Yuan didn't inform Gao Feng would keep thinking about it. He returned to the mansion with the gold Fae storage box and saw Hu Quan wiping the carving knife in his hand. Lin Yuan walked up to Hu Quan and said, "You're right. Uncle Hu, here are 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards. Are you interested?" Hu Quan's eyes immediately lit up when he heard this. A completely jade-textured green elm? Of course I'm interested in such a good thing. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan handed the gold Fae storage box in his hand to Hu Quan. "Thank you, Uncle Hu. This is for a friend of mine. I'll ask him to discuss the price with you later." Since Gao Feng could not find a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Lin Yuan happened to know and helped him. As for the price of using these 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards according to the blueprint, Gao Feng and Hu Quan would have to discuss it themselves. Although Hu Quan had signed a contract with him, he would not ask for any compensation for any items he made for the manor and his own forces. However, Lin Yuan would not really treat Hu Quan as a tool. He didn't even tell Hu Quan what his friend wanted to make before throwing it to Hu Quan, letting Hu Quan unknowingly become a coolie. This was tantamount to disrespecting Hu Quan. Hu Quan was a little unhappy when he heard that. "Why are you being so polite to me? Go talk to your friends. I eat well in this manner, and there are countless spiritual materials for me to use. I've long considered myself a part of this manor." As he said this, Hu Quan looked at the feature wall again. Hu Quan looked at himself next to Lin Yuan on the feature wall and said firmly to Lin Yuan, "Don't talk to me about remuneration next time. Giving me more completely jade-textured wood for my use is the best remuneration." At this point, Hu Quan smacked his lips and said, "Your friend is lucky. My fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede's first creation is going to be this object for your friend." At that moment, when you walked out of the kitchen and said to Hu Quan, "Uncle Hu, you really have to sleep at night in the future. Uncle Hu, you really have to sleep at night in the future. Otherwise, you won't be able to endure it for too long. After all, it's time for the liver to detoxify at night. If you work so hard, it will hurt your liver. Big brother Lu cooked cinnamon pork liver soup for you again today. Uncle Hu, even if you don't want to drink it, you must drink it all this time. When Hu Quan heard Wen Yu's well-intentioned tone, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch wildly. Hu Quan hated the smell of liver the most in his life. However, recently, Lu Jia had been cooking cinnamon pork liver soup for him. This made Hu Quan, who had never been taken care of, feel that he was being treated like a pregnant woman. However, it had to be said that even a boorish man like Hu Quan had been with everyone in the manor for a long time. Slowly, he began to treat this manor as a home that he had to protect. However, this cinnamon pork liver soup was really hard to come by. Hu Quan knew that the cinnamon pork liver soup helped the body detoxify. Even if he pinched his nose, he still could not drink the pork liver soup's taste. At that moment, Hu Quan really felt that he should change his work and rest schedule. Otherwise, even an immortal would not be able to stand drinking this cinnamon pork liver soup every day. Lin Yuan looked at Hu Quan's grinning expression and could not help but laugh. Perhaps the only thing that could defeat Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, and make him not stay up late, was the cinnamon pork liver soup. While eating, Lin Yuan found that Endless Summer, who had always been dressed like a punk, had become normal overnight. How did he become normal in just one night? At that moment, Endless Summer's hair had returned to its original hair color, and it was tied into a simple ponytail. Endless Summer was also wearing a very simple pinkish-white small suit. It matched with the body weaponization bracelet on her wrist, which was full of pinkish-purple hydrangea flowers, and some simple and grand spirit accessories. It made Endless Summer's entire aura appear elegant and noble. It no longer gave people a rustic, non-mainstream, and heavy metal feeling like before. Lin Yuan looked at the Mother of Bloodbath. The Mother of Bloodbath nodded at Lin Yuan without leaving a trace, indicating that it had completed its mission. Lin Yuan gave the Mother of Bloodbath a thumbs up without leaving a trace. Lin Yuan did not expect the Mother of Bloodbath to complete its mission so well. But how did the Mother of Bloodbath complete its mission? Yesterday's third update. Go to the ticket. End of this chapter. Chapter 385. Could it be related to those fat otakus that the Mother of Bloodbath had been showing Endless Summer recently? During this time, Endless Summer had been eroded and influenced by the punk culture. It made Endless Summer's hair look like it had been struck by lightning. As soon as Lin Yuan saw Endless Summer, there were at least 5 colors on her hair. Moreover, Endless Summer's clothes were also very exaggerated. All kinds of strange clothes made Endless Summer look like a spirited little girl. The spirit accessories that Endless Summer had bought before were also put to use. Endless Summer hung almost all the spirit accessories that it had bought before on its body. This caused all kinds of spirit accessories to collide with each other no matter where Endless Summer went. Lin Yuan, Wen Yu, Lu Jia, and Hu Quan all tactfully mentioned the disadvantages of the punk style to Endless Summer. This allowed Endless Summer to appropriately slow down its style. However, be it Wen Yu, Lu Jia, or Hu Quan, even Lin Yuan had almost been influenced by Endless Summer's shameless metal culture. At one point, Lin Yuan thought that wearing 5 colors and all kinds of metal chains might look better. But in the end, rationality won over Endless Summer's introduction. What puzzled Lin Yuan was how the Mother of Bloodbath had completely changed Endless Summer's taste after one night, even though she had been dressed very exaggeratedly yesterday. This made Lin Yuan rather curious. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the Mother of Bloodbath say to Endless Summer, "Big Sister Summer, let me tell you. Big Sister Xia, let me tell you, those fat otakus like your previous style the most. If you still wear the same clothes as before, fat otakus will take photos of you on the street and post them on the Star Web forum. Then I don't know how many fat otakus will stick your photos on the wall. What do you think they will do to your photos at night?" Lin Yuan could clearly feel Endless Summer shiver. Immediately after, Lin Yuan realized that Endless Summer was looking at him, and she asked with some difficulty, "Oh really?" When Lin Yuan heard Endless Summer asking him, he wanted to explain to Endless Summer that fat otakus were actually huge and gentle animals. What the mother of Bloodbath had said previously was not what fat otakus did. Fat otakus like paper people, not punk photos. Fat otakus were almost as picky as emperors choosing concubines when looking for paper people. But then Lin Yuan saw the mother of Bloodbath blinking hard at him. The meaning in the mother of Bloodbath's eyes was obvious. It was obvious that he was saying that the task he had assigned to him had been completed. If you screw this up again, you'll have to figure it out yourself. There's nothing I can do about it. Lin Yuan received the information from the mother of Bloodbath's eyes, and first looked at Endless Summer's normal attire. He recalled Endless Summer's unconventional attire. Lin Yuan hurriedly cleared his throat and said, "That's right. Endless Summer, the mother of Bloodbath is right. Your photo will turn yellow after a few days on the wall. Is Fat Otaku really that scary?" After saying that, in order to deepen the horror of the Fat Otaku, he pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. Do you know what is called a death camp?" Lin Yuan's words stunned Endless Summer. In fact, not only Endless Summer, but even Lu Jie Wenyu and Hu Quan were also stunned. They were all thinking about Lin Yuan's question. Only the mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with a scrutinizing gaze, as though it was the first time it truly knew him. Endless Summer said after thinking for a long time, "If it's a death camp, could it be the legendary Pond of Sin?" Lin Yuan shook his head. "The Fat Otaku's bed sheet is called a death camp." Endless Summer was a little confused and did not understand what Lin Yuan meant. However, when Lu Jie and Hu Quan understood what Lin Yuan meant. Immediately after, Lin Yuan saw that Endless Summer did not seem to understand the question he had asked before, so he quickly asked, "Endless Summer, do you know what can be called a life plunderer?" Endless Summer thought for a long time, but could not think of a reason. With his suzerain/myth 3 strength, only creation-breed life forms should be able to take his life. Lin Yuan felt that Endless Summer should really make up for it, did not even know such things. The Fat Otaku's hands can be called a life plunderer. Hu Quan was originally looking at the cinnamon pork liver soup in front of him with a difficult expression. However, when he heard Lin Yuan's words, he choked on the egg roll in his mouth and coughed violently. Endless Summer still did not seem to understand. However, the mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with a very dangerous gaze. Lin Yuan looked at the mother of Bloodbath's eyes with a serious expression, just like when the mother of Bloodbath winked at him. He winked at the mother of Bloodbath. In his opinion, he was doing this for Endless Summer's sake. Otherwise, why would Lin Yuan go to a Fat Otaku, who was such a gentle animal? The mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan and suddenly smacked its lips. "How do you know so much? Cuff him up and take him away." Lin Yuan felt a little wronged. How would you know what I'm talking about if you don't understand? If they were to be taken away, the two of them would be handcuffed together. Hu Quan burst out laughing. However, before Hu Quan could laugh more, he heard Wenyu say, "Uncle Hu, if you don't drink the cinnamon pork liver soup while it's hot, it'll get cold. Brother Lu cooked it for you for 1.5 hours this morning." Wenyu cleverly changed the topic and shifted the topic from Lin Yuan to Hu Quan. Hu Quan looked at the looming chunks of pig liver in the big bowl of cinnamon branch pork liver soup in front of him and felt a bitter taste in his mouth. Upon seeing that Hu Quan was not very interested in the cinnamon pork liver soup, Lin Yuan said to Lu Jie, "Big brother Lu, I bought a lot of ingredients last night. If Uncle Hu doesn't like to drink pig liver soup, you can also drink beef liver soup or lamb liver soup." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan immediately picked up the bowl, pinched his nose, and drank the cinnamon pork liver soup in one gulp. Then, he quickly picked up the banana milk in his left hand and drank half a cup. He ate a few mouthfuls of fruit slices, mixed with maple syrup, before suppressing the taste of pig liver in his mouth. However, the more Hu Quan watched Lin Yuan eat breakfast slowly, the more he felt that Lin Yuan was actually a black-bellied kid. What was the difference between beef liver soup, lamb liver soup, and pig liver soup? Weren't they all liver? Moreover, wasn't the smell in this beef liver soup and lamb liver soup even worse? This kid must be taking revenge on me for not holding back my laughter when he was talking just now. After eating, Lin Yuan told everyone about his plan to enter seclusion for a period of time. Hu Quan rubbed his stomach and said, I happen to not be going back to the mansion today and tomorrow. Those old guys in the Spirit Craftsman Association are going to hold a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman ceremony for me. When I come back, I'll be a real Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. Today's first update, end of this chapter. Chapter 386. Looking at Hu Quan's joyful expression after achieving his goal in life, Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan with a smile, Then I'll congratulate Uncle Hu first. Hu Quan chuckled at first, then rolled his eyes at Lin Yuan and said in a bad mood, Don't worry. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have become a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. Lu Jie said as he tidied up the tableware on the table. Uncle Hu, when are you coming back? Call us. When you come back, I'll cook a table of delicious food for you to celebrate. Hu Quan did not refuse but said subconsciously, I don't eat liver. Looking at Hu Quan's genuine expression, Lu Jie doubted his cooking skills for the first time. I've also drunk a lot of the cinnamon pork liver soup I made. It's quite delicious. Why did Hu Quan hate drinking cinnamon pork liver soup so much? Why don't I add some fish head and Sichuan sesame when I make cinnamon and pig liver soup for Hu Quan next time? And make cinnamon and Sichuan sesame fish head and pig liver soup. While Hu Quan was nourishing his liver, he could also replenish his spirit. With that in mind, Lu Jie felt that his idea was simply too awesome. It was like killing two birds with one stone. After sending Hu Quan out, Lin Yuan returned to his room. After returning to his room, he logged into the Star Web as a creation master. The first thing he did when he logged into Star Web was to go to his purchase with no loss store. The 10 flower brocade pearls that he had displayed earlier were once again traded under the guise of blind trading. Then, he started to check all the information he had received in the information bar during this period. Among these messages, most of them were asking if there were more flower brocade pearls that could be traded directly. Although these messages were sent in their own names, these people should have their own forces behind them. If a single person were to purchase so many flower brocade pearls, even a pinnacle class 4 creation master wouldn't be able to use them all. Lin Yuan had kept all this information. This was because Lin Yuan might make this deal in the future. Of course, there were also some messages asking if there were any bronze/epic phase here. Lin Yuan deleted all such information. Since Lin Yuan had already opened up a private faction territory on Star Web, he would not be able to do so. Furthermore, the main business direction he had set for his faction on Star Web was based on the different willpower runes comprehended by the Spirit Chi professionals. He was going to customize bronze/epic phase suitable for these Spirit Chi professionals with willpower runes. Thus, he naturally would not let his purchase with no loss store overlap with his private faction's business direction. Wouldn't that make him his own competitor? However, not being a competitor did not mean that he would not sell high-quality bronze phase through his purchase with no loss store in the future. Immediately after, he once again posted a trade message in his Star Web store. This message wasn't so much about exchanging items as it was about exchanging people. Lin Yuan wrote in his purchase with no loss store's exchange message, recruiting king-class powerhouses with 3 or more willpower runes. If you give me your loyalty, I will give you a future. Lin Yuan directly released such a message with no intention of concealing his purpose. Lin Yuan did not write what kind of future he could give in this message. However, Lin Yuan believed that given the strength that his store had currently displayed, king-class experts who wanted to rely on a faction to obtain stable resources would definitely come into contact with him. However, Lin Yuan would not entertain ordinary king-class experts who came to contact with him. The king-class experts that Lin Yuan wanted to recruit needed to have at least 3 willpower runes. Lin Yuan's purpose of posting this message was not mainly to recruit those powerful king-class experts. Those powerful king-class experts were not easy to recruit. Those powerful king-class experts could completely pledge allegiance to top factions and obtain a massive amount of resources from top factions. What Lin Yuan really wanted to recruit were those king-class experts who had poor starting conditions and could only nurture one main fey. after spending half a lifetime's resources. However, they had excellent talent and comprehended multiple willpower runes. Such king-class experts had always been limited by resources due to their poor starting point. Therefore, their main phase were often not very strong. They might have many willpower runes on the path of growth and could show their amazing talent. However, such king-class experts were still not favored by the veteran factions. This was because such king-class experts who did not have strong main phase could not immediately contribute to the veteran factions if they pledged allegiance to them. The veteran factions could only invest high-quality bronze phase in king-class experts with weak main phase. Only then would they be able to grow. The addition of such king-class experts was almost like constantly absorbing the veteran faction's resources. Moreover, it would take a long time for the phase to grow. The veteran factions were naturally unwilling to do such a loss-making business. It was very realistic in a world where strength was respected. Even if one had high talent, it could only be built up with high-quality bronze phase and massive resources. For the veteran factions, investing in king-class experts with powerful main phase was the best choice. Therefore, the king-class experts who only had one main phase and did not have strong main combat ability, but many willpower runes were in a very awkward position. After all, there were too few creation masters in this world. High-quality bronze phase were really precious. Even those king-class experts with powerful main phase had joined the veteran factions for more than a decade. It was not certain that they would be able to obtain a high-quality bronze phase that was suitable for them to comprehend a willpower rune. The more unpopular king-class experts with weak main phase, but many willpower runes were by the veteran factions, the better it was for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan welcomed such king-class experts very much. High-quality bronze phase might be difficult for others, but it was just a matter of a few dozen minutes for Lin Yuan. It could be said that Lin Yuan was now doing a business without capital. He was using things that he could easily obtain to exchange for the loyalty of king-class experts with weak main phase, but many willpower runes. Moreover, after pouring high-grade bronze phase into such king-class experts, Lin Yuan could raise them in a free-range state. No matter how weak these king-class experts' main phase were, they could still have some savings and take out the resources to nurture their new phase. Lin Yuan did not need to spend any effort in the future and saved a lot of trouble. This was actually Lin Yuan's white-clothed follower plan. Today's second night watch, tomorrow's third night watch, and tomorrow's first night watch. End of this chapter. Chapter 387. These king-class experts, whose main phase were not strong but had multiple willpower runes, would receive the infusion of Lin Yuan's high-quality bronze phase. Perhaps they would not give Lin Yuan any strong returns in a short period of time. However, after a year or two, these king-class experts would nurture their other phase. They would already be no different from those king-class experts with powerful main phase. In fact, they would even be stronger than those king-class experts with powerful main phase. Lin Yuan was not sure how many such king-class experts would look for him. However, every time such a king-class expert looked for him, it was equivalent to planting a seed in the soil that could bear fruit. As long as this seed could germinate in the soil, it was destined to bloom into a gorgeous flower. Lin Yuan did not believe that those king-class experts with low starting points but high talent would be willing to be mediocre. Lin Yuan had a temptation that any spirit chi professional could not resist. He was not like those veteran factions who only offered high-quality bronze phase. He offered high-quality bronze phase that could be customized according to the willpower runes. Therefore, the king had already opened up and was waiting for the fish to swim in. The news of Lin Yuan using the flower brocade pearls for blind trading was quickly known by those who paid attention to Lin Yuan's store. However, when these people came to Lin Yuan's purchase with no lost store to check, they were stunned by Lin Yuan's recruitment message. This one-star store's appetite was too big. Or rather, how many resources did it take to be able to say such words like "give me loyalty, and I'll give you a future"? Lin Yuan logged off Star Web and returned to his spirit lock spatial zone, preparing to enhance the bronze eye/normal ethereal jellyfish. When Lin Yuan entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he found Gray playing hide and seek with the wind speed rapid antelope. The two little fellows ran and chased, hiding and hiding, bringing a lot of fun to the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After Lin Yuan got close to the two little fellows eyes lit up. For the next few days, Lin Yuan began to focus on enhancing the ethereal jellyfish to increase its grade and quality. For the past few days, he had only slept for 4 to 5 hours a day, just like when he had been in seclusion. After spending 5 days, he finally upgraded the ethereal jellyfish from Bronze I/Normal to Bronze X/Legend. Lin Yuan realized that the pale red ethereal jellyfish's color did not change. It was still the same pale red color after sucking his blood. However, the heart of the ethereal jellyfish would occasionally flash with a dark red light. At the same time, the ethereal jellyfish's body became much larger, and many bright silver patterns appeared on its body. When the ethereal jellyfish shrunk its body, it felt like it was shuttling through several dimensions. As the light flickered, it was so close, but there seemed to be layers of barriers that prevented people from touching it. However, when Lin Yuan stretched out his hand to touch the ethereal jellyfish, it would materialize its body from the layers of space and transform into a physical body, allowing Lin Yuan to touch it. When he had been enhancing the ethereal jellyfish, he had realized that it always liked to run to his head. When the ethereal jellyfish landed on his head, it felt very warm and cool, but it was very comfortable. However, when paired with the ethereal jellyfish's festive color, it made Lin Yuan feel like he was wearing Little Red Riding Hood and a red wig. Under Lin Yuan's intense protest and clear objection, the ethereal jellyfish no longer landed on his head. Instead, it liked to lazily lie on Lin Yuan's neck when it had nothing to do. Every time the ethereal jellyfish landed on Lin Yuan's neck, it was as if he was wearing a red scarf. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, it was much better for it to be on his neck than on his head. As Lin Yuan continued to inject spirit chi into the ethereal jellyfish's body, the ethereal jellyfish broke through the limit of Bronze X and became a Silver I/Legend source-type life form. When the ethereal jellyfish broke through to the silver tier, 3 long spiral-shaped tentacles grew out of its 30 short tentacles. These 3 long spiral-shaped tentacles were very thick and nearly twice the length of the short tentacles. These 3 thick spiral-shaped tentacles grew in the center of the ethereal jellyfish's body and were surrounded by a circle of short tentacles. This made the ethereal jellyfish look much more magnificent than ordinary jellyfish in the past. Immediately after, Lin Yuan started to check the ethereal jellyfish's true data. Fey name: ethereal jellyfish, Fey species. Whisker jellyfish/floating jellyfish, Fey grade: Silver 1/10. Fey type: spatial Fey quality. Legend abilities: frowny face tentacle node. By breaking off the tentacles, the broken tentacles will be treated as a spatial node. Node teleportation: by sensing the spatial node, it will teleport to the designated spatial node. Node trigger: trigger the spatial node marked by the tentacle node, and teleport the target of the triggered node to other tentacle nodes, or the main body. After teleportation, the tentacle node will be ineffective. Exclusive skill: frowny face space tunnel. By breaking off a large number of tentacles, the tentacles will be fused into space to form a special long-distance spatial tunnel. When there are 3 long-distance spatial tunnels, each time one is destroyed, a new one can only be set up. After the ethereal jellyfish reached silver, the new silver ability was called Node Trigger. Node Trigger was the first step for the ethereal jellyfish to perfect the teleportation system that had just been formed. The activation of the silver ability, Node, had clearly given him quite a pleasant surprise. Node Trigger increased the functionality of the ethereal jellyfish's original teleportation system. Node Trigger could be said to allow Lin Yuan, the contractor, to enjoy the teleportation effect of the ethereal jellyfish. At the same time, the other tentacles holding the ethereal jellyfish could also teleport to various spatial nodes. After the teleportation, the tentacles that served as the teleportation medium would disappear. However, it made the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system more flexible. In Lin Yuan's opinion, The ethereal jellyfish's silver ability was equivalent to a certain extent to make up for the tense situation of only being able to set up 3 spatial tunnels in the faction establishment. It allowed the ethereal jellyfish's various spatial nodes to be perfectly linked. As long as Lin Yuan's faction members had a small section of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles, they could teleport to any spatial node. When they encountered danger, it was equivalent to giving Lin Yuan's faction members a chance to escape, making up for yesterday's 3rd update. End of this chapter. Chapter 388. He did not need to worry if the enemy took the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. If he wanted to use the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to teleport between the nodes, he would need to take out a drop of blood in advance for the ethereal jellyfish to swallow. The blood that was swallowed by the ethereal jellyfish would be stored in its stomach. Only those whose blood had been memorized by the ethereal jellyfish would be able to trigger the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to teleport between nodes. Lin Yuan cut off one of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles, and he discovered that the tentacles were actually ethereal jellyfish. In 1 hour, the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles would grow 2 centimeters. The ethereal jellyfish's tentacles were 30 centimeters long, so Lin Yuan estimated that it would take about 15 hours for 1 tentacle to grow. Then he cut off all the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. He now had a total of 30 ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. He first had to take these tentacles to the location where he wanted to set up the spatial node. The ethereal jellyfish seemed powerful, but it had its drawbacks. If the ethereal jellyfish wanted to teleport, it needed to set up the spatial node in advance. Moreover, the spatial node could not be too far out of the range that the ethereal jellyfish could cover. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's silver eye/legend strength. The ethereal jellyfish's strength could only cover less than half of the royal capital. However, such a distance was enough for Lin Yuan now. As for long-distance teleportation, Lin Yuan could set up the spatial tunnel. The distance that the spatial tunnel could teleport would depend on the number of ethereal jellyfish's tentacles he used. The more tentacles he used, the further the spatial tunnel could be set up. Therefore, in order not to waste the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation resources, Lin Yuan would cut off the new tentacles for the ethereal jellyfish at regular intervals. Lin Yuan could feel that the tentacles were like human hair to the ethereal jellyfish, and it would not feel anything when they were cut off. Lin Yuan was really reluctant to cut off the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. When Lin Yuan came out of seclusion in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he realized that it was already late at night. He felt very tired, so he crawled into bed and planned to have a good sleep. However, the royal capital's night was not peaceful. Even though the stars and moon in the sky were blocked by layers of dark clouds, they were still brightly illuminated by the lights of the capital, filling the eyes with prosperity. The early winter season had passed, and it had already become a real cold winter. The royal capital's weather might not be cold when compared to the true north, but the cold wind could easily blow through the Spirit Chi professionals' Spirit Chi clothes. Sporadic snowflakes slowly drifted down from the dark clouds in the sky, but it did not change the lively atmosphere. It was almost the end of the year, and many people came out in 2s and 3s at night. They gathered in some bars and restaurants, and watched the broadcast of the Guild Alliance's tournament. In the main city area of the kingdom, in a very exquisite and stylish detached villa, a young man who looked to be in his late 20s was sitting on a black musk deer leather sofa. A black leopard that was more than 3 meters long was lying beside the young man's feet. At this moment, the leopard seemed to be a little sleepy. Its tail was swaying, and there was still blood at the corner of its mouth. It was obvious that it had just eaten. The young man held a crystal wine glass in his hand, but at this moment, the crystal wine glass was being squeezed by the young man's fingers. It was as if it could explode at any moment. Behind the young man stood an old man in his 80s. The old man's back was bent, and his waist and legs almost formed a right angle. The old man was leaning on a walking stick. He was trembling as if a strong gust of wind could blow him down. At this moment, the 28-year-old youth's eyes were terrifyingly sinister. He was staring unblinkingly at the 2 dignified middle-aged men standing in front of him. The two dignified middle-aged men stood there, their foreheads dripping with sweat. His eyes were filled with caution and fear towards this sinister-looking young man. The sinister-looking young man said coldly, "You two, tell me, how long has it been?" The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce still hadn't taken it down. One of the slightly younger middle-aged men hurriedly said, "Young Master Zheng, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can no longer withstand our pressure," and moved from Indigo Azure City to the royal capital. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has shrunk and abandoned all the industries in Indigo Azure City. It no longer has a foundation. The malicious-looking youth's tone suddenly became like a spring breeze. "So according to you, you still have credit, right?" The slightly younger middle-aged man's expression clearly relaxed when he heard the malicious-looking youth's words. He didn't notice that the expression of his older companion, standing beside him, had suddenly become uneasy. Instead, he continued to speak to himself. "Young Master Zheng, we don't dare to claim credit, but the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources are too complicated. We still need some time to target them." The malicious-looking youth was so angry that he laughed and fiercely slapped the armrest of the musk deerskin sofa, making a loud bang. The slightly younger middle-aged man, who had just spoken, was so scared that he knelt on the ground. The malicious-looking youth shouted angrily, "Are you a pig? A Chamber of Commerce's online resources target each store on Star Web. Who knows how many stores on Star Web have signed purchase contracts with the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce? Only a pig would think of targeting the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources." The middle-aged man kneeling on the ground really didn't know what to say and squeezed out 3 words after a long while. "I'm a pig." The malicious-looking young man almost couldn't catch his breath. He was so angry that he crushed the wine glass in his hand. The malicious-looking youth, who had crushed the wine glass, threw the cup in his hand onto the forehead of the middle-aged man kneeling on the ground, leaving a trail of blood. Following which, the malicious-looking youth shifted his gaze to the other middle-aged man. "Speaking of, is this how the Zheng family supports the two of you to do things? When you two brothers attacked the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce controlled by your father, you weren't as soft as you are now. Hee. First place for seizing power? Is doing something harder than eating shit?" Hearing this, the older middle-aged man immediately knelt on the ground and said in fear, "The two of us only got to where we are today because of young Master Zheng's support. We'll do whatever young Master Zheng tells us to do." The malicious-looking youth kicked the drowsy Black Panther beside him. After being kicked, the Black Panther roared, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. But after seeing that it was the malicious-looking youth who had kicked it, the Black Panther continued to lie on the ground, without saying a word. The malicious-looking youth looked at the 2 middle-aged men kneeling in front of him and said, "You're not as good as this stupid panther. You are all inferior to this stupid leopard. Don't you have any teeth? I thought you knew when you seized your father's Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce that those who were bitten to death by sharp teeth were destined to not be able to block the way anymore." Today's first update, asking for votes. Have you changed the article? The foreshadowing is done. I'll speed up the pace in the future. Sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 389. The 2 middle-aged men, who were kneeling on the ground, looked at each other when they heard the malicious-looking youth's words. Then the younger middle-aged man said carefully, "Young Master Zheng, I heard that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has also found a backer. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was originally an empty shell. What do you think?" The malicious-looking youth's gaze became increasingly dangerous as he looked at the 2 middle-aged men kneeling in front of him. Since the listening Heron Union has moved from Indigo Azure City to the royal capital, it has moved right under your noses. Don't tell me that you can't control the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which has given up all its offline resources, right under your nose. As for the rest, I will take care of it." After the 2 middle-aged men received the order and reply from the sinister-looking young man, they quickly retreated out of the room in the villa in fear. At this moment, the hunchbacked old man behind the sinister-looking young man suddenly spoke. "Young master, I've heard of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current leader. Listen." The malicious-looking young man stood up and shrugged as he said nonchalantly, Elder Neo, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is just an ant. So what if listen is a big shot? How can someone who doesn't even have a chess piece be worthy of playing chess? From the sinister-looking youth's tone, it could be heard that he did not take listen seriously. The hunchbacked old man had wanted to say something, but after hearing what the sinister-looking young man said, he stopped. Young master, do you want me to probe the faction behind the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce? The sinister-looking youth waved his hand and said, given the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current situation, do you think it will be a veteran faction that can take over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce? What I'm really interested in is the coastal sea controlled by the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in Indigo Azure City. Maijing family wants to develop coastal resources in Indigo Azure City, so this small coastal sea in the hands of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is destined to belong to Maijing family. If there really is a force that wants to block the way. At this point, the malicious-looking youth lowered his head and suddenly stopped talking. The hunchbacked elder Neo paused for a moment before asking, what are your plans, young master? The malicious-looking youth said as he looked at the shattered wine glass on the ground. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's backer might not necessarily manage the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, but if this backer really wants to touch the Zheng family's interests, then it is better to let him be the cup on the ground. The stooped old Neo replied after listening to the sinister-looking youth's words. I understand, young master, leave this matter to me. The malicious-looking man nodded lightly, then used almost all his strength to kick the Black Panther lying on the ground. Ever since the Black Panther was kicked awake, it had not closed its eyes to rest. Seeing the sinister-looking young man kick at it, the black leopard was clearly afraid, and did not dare to dodge at all, taking the kick head-on. The sinister-looking youth sat on the back of the Black Panther and said, I want everything to be done before the active period of the dimensional rift. Otherwise, if the main family blames me, I won't be able to bear the consequences. Old Neo's hunchback seemed to bend even lower. Rest assured, young master. Under the night sky, the wind carried snow and a bone-piercing chill, as it surged in the direction of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The winter sun was lazier than usual. The sun rose high in the sky at 5 or 6 o'clock in the summer. Even though it was already 7 or 8 o'clock, the sky was just beginning to brighten. He had been working hard to enhance the ethereal jellyfish for the past few days. Therefore, according to his usual resting time after working hard, Lin Yuan would probably sleep until noon. He was probably going to sleep until noon to replenish the vitality that he had lost in the past few days. However, it was only 7 o'clock in the morning today. When the sky had just brightened, Lin Yuan woke up from his sleep. He could sense that Chimey had woken up from the bird's nest made by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches and leaves in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan summoned the awakened Chimey from the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After Lin Yuan summoned Chimey, it chirped a few times. When Lin Yuan heard Chimey's chirping, he felt that it was like the collision of soft jade. It was not only pleasing to the ear. Chimey's chirping seemed to be able to penetrate deep into the soul and become a soul voice that was compatible with the soul. Lin Yuan could not help but be speechless. Given Chimey's current voice, if it were to sing, wouldn't it be amazing? After the chirping, Chimey immediately landed on Lin Yuan's ear. It used its mouth to peck at the loose hair beside Lin Yuan's ear, and tidied up the loose hair that had been stuck up by the pillow when he was sleeping. Immediately after, Chimey jumped onto Genius' small head. It used its small claws to jump around on Genius' head. Genius was woken up from his slumber in just a few moments. Genius let out a meow that was filled with laziness. However, when Genius saw that it was Chimey, it immediately became spirited. The two furry tails behind it rose up, and the two small tails joined together like a small arch bridge. Chimey flapped its wings and landed on the small arch bridge formed by Genius' tails. Then, Genius swayed its tails and let Chimey feel like it was swinging on the arch bridge formed by its two tails. Chimey had a happy expression on its face. Lin Yuan rubbed Genius' small head and said, Genius, you dote on Chimey too much. You dote on Chimey too much. When Chimey heard Lin Yuan's words, It chirped twice to express its protest. Genius and Lin Yuan both dote on me. When Lin Yuan heard that Chimey could actually speak, he was stunned for a moment before he was pleasantly surprised. Lin Yuan did not expect Chimey to unlock the ability to speak after evolving from Fantasy I to Fantasy II. Actually, it made sense. Chimey would usually be able to understand Lin Yuan's words. In the past, Chimey might have learned to sing like a parrot, but it had also laid down a language foundation for Chimey. Now that Chimey was able to speak, it might not be very proficient. However, it would need to go through a period of practice or wait for Chimey's quality to evolve from Fantasy II to Fantasy III and undergo a bloodline evolution. Chimey would then be able to converse freely like a normal person. Lin Yuan extended his finger and said, "Chimey, come over. Let me see if there are any changes after your quality upgrade." Chimey immediately flew from Genius' tail to Lin Yuan's hand. It chirped twice and said, "That's right." It chirped twice and said, "Lin Yuan, Chimey has become beautiful. Look." After speaking, Chimey spread out its wings and showed them to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan realized that Chimey's size might not have increased after evolving to Fantasy II, but it was still as exquisite and small as before. However, Lin Yuan could clearly see that the cloud imprints on Chimey's feathers had become heavier, and the starlight halo hidden on each cloud imprint seemed to have become much brighter. Yesterday's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 390. Even though Chimey wasn't using the radiant body, the stars in the cloud patterns on its feather were faintly emitting a glass-like brilliance. At the same time, the feathers on Chimey's head grew longer, and some inconspicuous patterns appeared on the feathers. Lin Yuan could not tell what these patterns looked like. The curled feathers matched with the patterns made it look like Chimey was wearing a crown on its head. Lin Yuan knew that Chimey's bloodline had been stimulated to a greater extent. Otherwise, Chimey's appearance would not have changed so easily with the naked eye. After Chimey woke up from its improved quality state, Genius was obviously overjoyed. Lin Yuan knew that Genius had a small habit. The happier it was, the higher its tail would be. Now Genius's two little tails were about to reach the sky. However, he still had to let Chimey continue to improve its quality on the tree nest surrounded by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches and leaves, increasing its quality from Fantasy II to Fantasy III. Therefore Lin Yuan said to Chimey, "Emin, can we go to the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree to improve its quality next?" After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Chimey chirped twice and rolled its small eyes before saying, "All right, let's go. Lin Yuan, can you teach me more songs the next time I wake up?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan used his finger to tease Chimey lovingly. "You're such a smart girl. Of course, it's not a problem if you want to learn to sing. I'll teach you as many songs as you want to learn in the future." When Chimey received Lin Yuan's reply, it immediately flew around the house twice excitedly. Its eyes seemed to flash with a large number of comments praising it in the live streaming room. Chimey thought in its little head, "I, the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess, will still be busy for a period of time. Once I'm done, I'll sing a new song for all of you. You must praise me properly." However, Chimey didn't know that its disappearance for such a long time had made its fans, who had been waiting bitterly in the live streaming room, suffer. Of course, the one who suffered the most was Roll 1, who was still crazily sending gifts every day. At the same time, Chimey was abnormally excited to be able to increase its grade once again. A quality upgrade was an irresistible temptation to any fae. Moreover, after Chimey woke up this time, it could clearly feel that it had become a lot stronger. Therefore, even though Chimey was very lively and active, it was still willing to fall into a deep slumber to improve its quality and stimulate the bloodline in its body. On the other hand, when Genius heard that Chimey was going to sleep again, its originally raised tail immediately drooped down. Lin Yuan said as he rubbed Genius' head, "When Chimey is asleep, Genius, you can still play with Gray in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Gray should be able to come out and play with you after some time." Genius could sense the concern in Lin Yuan's words, and immediately rubbed its little head against Lin Yuan's palm, before nodding like a little adult. Lin Yuan looked at Genius, and truly felt that he should quickly comprehend a willpower rune that was suitable for genius. Then, genius would be able to evolve into a fantasy breed. However, even if he could comprehend more willpower runes, he would not be able to do so. However, the comprehension of the willpower rune was not something that Lin Yuan could decide alone. It all depended on fate. After making arrangements for Chimey, he looked at the time and realized that it was already 7:30 am. However, Lin Yuan felt that his head was still groggy, and it was obvious that he did not have enough sleep. The feeling of sleeping half full would make him feel very weak for the rest of the day. Lin Yuan hugged Genius and laid on the bed. The winter sun might have risen late, but it was very warm when it shone through the window. Soon enough, Lin Yuan and Genius closed their eyes and fell into a deep slumber. Lin Yuan slept until noon. After waking up, he stretched and felt refreshed. After washing up, he carried Genius, who was still in a daze, and went downstairs. Lin Yuan was wearing a white matte spirit chi attire that was mixed with cotton. The white fabric was embroidered with goose yellow silk with rippling patterns. Lin Yuan's temperament was sunny and gentle, and with such a set of spirit chi attire, it made Lin Yuan's natural and amiable aura even more obvious. When Lin Yuan went downstairs, he saw Hu Quan sitting on the sofa made of water rhinoceros skin and instructing the fantasy breed, wood weaving house centipede, to rapidly devour the completely jade-textured wood powder. Then, he let the wood weaving house centipede decompose and process the completely jade-textured wood powder in its stomach. Finally, tough completely jade-textured silk threads were ejected from the silk sac. Hu Quan's hands moved quickly and cleverly weaved these 2 strands of jade-textured silk threads onto a metal spiritual material frame that had already been constructed. In a short while, these tough jade-textured silk threads were entwined into a dark pattern of a majestic city in the clouds on the metal frame. At that moment, Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan walking down the stairs and quickly said, "Lin Yuan, come over here. Lin Yuan, come over for a moment. Let me see if this mask I made fits you." Lin Yuan walked over and looked at the object in Hu Quan's hand that was already half-formed. After looking at it for a long time, Lin Yuan finally saw that Hu Quan was making a mask. There were not many jade-textured silk threads entwined on the metal frame, and there were still many gaps. It was really hard to associate it with a mask. When Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan's expression, he felt that his spirit craftsman ability was being questioned. He pointed at the sofa at the side and said, "Sit there for 20 minutes. Sit there for 20 minutes, and I'll be done with this mask." Immediately after, Hu Quan's hands danced nimbly again, pulling the silk threads spat out by the wood weaving house centipede and weaving them onto the metal frame. As time passed, the metal frame was slowly filled. Finally, Hu Quan took out some completely jade-textured wood blocks that had been polished before and tightened them with silk threads. Using the silk inlay technique, he embedded these 2 completely jade-textured wood blocks into the metal frame. During these 20 minutes, Lin Yuan watched Hu Quan create an exquisite mask from the frame bit by bit. The more Lin Yuan looked, the more he could feel the Class 5 spirit craftsman's ingenious craftsmanship when manipulating fantasy breed phase to make objects. As the only spirit craftsman in the mansion, Lin Yuan had naturally told Hu Quan about his vision for the Sky City. This mask happened to be made according to Lin Yuan's vision for the Sky City. After Hu Quan finished making the mask, he handed it to Lin Yuan and motioned for him to put it on. Lin Yuan took the mask from Hu Quan's hand and found that this seemingly heavy mask was unexpectedly light. When he put the mask on his face, it could only cover his eyes and nose. Yesterday's 3rd update, end of this chapter. Chapter 391. However, the light refracted by the jade-textured silk threads was able to hide Lin Yuan's exposed chin and forehead by the halo. The mask had 2 jade-textured wood protrusions at the ears, which looked like 2 dragon horns. It immediately gave Lin Yuan a feeling of maturity and evil. The mask followed the curve of Lin Yuan's chin, making it impossible to tell his age. He looked at the completely jade-textured table next to him and saw the effect of the mask based on the light and shadow reflected on the table. Lin Yuan gave Hu Quan a thumbs up and praised him. Uncle Hu, your spirit craftsman skills are truly marvelous and superb. Hu Quan chuckled when he heard Lin Yuan's praise. It's not good for you to show your face in public when you're building a private force. With this mask, it'll be much more convenient. The jade threads on your mask are the patterns of the majestic city in the clouds. When the time comes, I'll make something similar to this mask. I'll use the jade threads to outline some white cloud patterns. It'll be convenient for others to bring it along when they go out to do things. Lin Yuan nodded and asked, Uncle Hu, is there enough completely jade-textured wood in the manor? Hu Quan thought for a moment and said, in addition to the 4 pieces of completely jade-textured green elm, I'll have to make a fortune, longevity, and happiness bed, as well as a mask to weave. Before the new year, there was no shortage of completely jade-textured wood. In the past 2 days, I went to count the completely jade-textured wood fragments that I had previously stored and found that there were too many of them. It's not enough to supply the goods to the listening heron merchant house. I can rely on this fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede to make jade-textured silk threads to weave some objects. I found a total of 27 spirit craftsmen to prepare the items for listen. These spirit craftsmen have already started working overtime at the Spirit Craftsmen Association. The manufactured items are all placed in my private warehouse at the Spirit Craftsman Chamber of Commerce. See when it's appropriate to send these items to listen. He planned to go out in a while and use the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to set up spatial nodes everywhere in the royal capital. Back in his house, he had used an ethereal jellyfish's tentacle to set up a spatial node. He now had 29 ethereal jellyfish tentacles, so he could only set up a total of 29 spatial nodes in the royal capital. Lin Yuan did not intend to set up so many spatial nodes at once. However, he felt that he needed to go to the listening heron chamber of commerce's location in the royal capital to set up a spatial node. Therefore Lin Yuan said, that's right. Uncle Hu, I'm going to the listening heron chamber of commerce in a while. I can bring these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder to listen. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan replied, that's right. In that case, I'll get a Class 3 spirit craftsman to take these objects made of completely jade-textured powder out of my private warehouse now. Then, I'll put it in a platinum phase storage box and send it over. Hu Quan then called the Class 3 spirit craftsman, who was rushing to make items in the Spirit Craftsman Association. From Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan could clearly hear how much authority he had in the Spirit Craftsman Association after becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman. After becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman, as long as Hu Quan did not go too far, he could already deploy the Spirit Craftsman Association's resources to a certain extent. Hu Quan hung up the phone and was silent for a moment before speaking to Lin Yuan very seriously. Young master, I want to rope in a group of Class 3 spirit craftsmen and set up an organization under your private faction Sky City. What do you think? After hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan gestured for Hu Quan to continue talking about his plan. Although Lin Yuan did not express his opinion, he was very supportive of Hu Quan wanting to rope in a group of Class 3 spirit craftsmen. He was very supportive of setting up an organization under his private faction. If Lin Yuan wanted to build a sky city on the floating island Whale's Back, he would need a large number of spirit craftsmen to work for him. Even if Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, worked himself to death, he would obviously not be able to complete the construction of the huge sky city. Therefore, if Hu Quan could gather a large number of Class 3 spirit craftsmen under him, it would obviously be of great use to Lin Yuan's future construction of the sky city. Hu Quan very seriously told Lin Yuan about his plan. This time, I'm looking for Class 3 spirit craftsmen in the Spirit Craftsman Association to process items in my private name. Many Class 3 spirit craftsmen said that if they can learn spirit craftsman skills from me, they are willing to attach themselves to me without charging any fees. So I think this is an opportunity. At this point, Hu Quan's eyes clearly revealed something called ambition. Most Class 5 spirit craftsmen in the Spirit Craftsman Association choose to be alone or become distinguished guests of the veteran factions. There are many Class 3 and Class 4 spirit craftsmen in the Spirit Craftsman Association, but there has never been a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman to use this power. If I can attract these Class 3 and Class 4 Spirit Craftsmen, not only will I be able to earn money for us in the future development. At the same time, no matter what we want to build in the future, we no longer need to worry about manpower. Lin Yuan could hear from Hu Quan's words that he had always been thinking about this big family. Of course, a large part of this was because Hu Quan had a new goal and ambition after becoming a Class 5 creation master. It was not a bad thing to have ambition, as it could urge people to make progress. Lin Yuan had always been in favor of Hu Quan's idea, so he naturally would not object to it. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said, "Uncle Hu, your spirit craftsmanship is superb. Uncle Hu, your spirit craftsmanship is superb. Why don't you establish a heavenly craft pavilion? Uncle Hu, just tell me how many resources you need to spend to set up the heavenly craft pavilion. I will fully support it." Hu Quan burst into laughter. "Heavenly craft pavilion is good. Heavenly craft pavilion is good. Young master, I won't let you down when I develop the heavenly craft pavilion." In a short while, the Class 3 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan had named, arrived at the entrance of the mansion. Hu Quan went straight to the door and took the platinum phase storage box containing the objects made of completely jade-textured powder and handed it to Lin Yuan. After Lin Yuan received the platinum phase storage box, he stored it in his amber button-shaped diamond phase storage box. Just as Lin Yuan was about to go out, the mother of Bloodbath, which was looking at the fish in front of the fish tank, said, "Lin Yuan, wait for me for a while." "Lin Yuan, wait for me. I will go out with you." "Old Hu, make a mask for me too. I'll take it with me." After saying that, the mother of Bloodbath pulled Lin Yuan to stand beside the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. It let Lin Yuan watch the 3 Mountain River eternal life carps swimming in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank with it. Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 392. There were always amazing things appearing in the manor. The people in the manor were already used to it, and were no longer as surprised as they were at first. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. Why was the mother of Bloodbath staring at the 3 Mountain River eternal life carps? Suddenly, a bad thought flashed in his mind. Could the mother of Bloodbath be greedy for fish? At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath spoke. "Lin Yuan, the 3 koi's bloodline isn't simple. The bloodlines of these 3 koi fish are the same, and they influence and attract each other. When they are together, the 3 bloodlines faintly fuse into one, as if there is only one bloodline that is 3 times larger. When these 3 koi fish evolve to a certain extent, it's very likely that one of them will be the main one, and the other 2 will be the support, forming a special mutation and evolution." He did not know what the special mutation evolution the mother of Bloodbath was talking about. However, Lin Yuan secretly remembered it in his heart. These 3 Mountain River eternal life carps had slowly evolved from myriad form, and every evolution had been through Lin Yuan's hands. Therefore, if a special mutation really occurred in the future, he would be well aware of it and would not panic at that time. In less than half an hour, Hu Quan threw the newly made mask with cloud patterns to the mother of Bloodbath. After Lin Yuan and the mother of Bloodbath went out, he booked a flying fei and headed toward the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace. At the entrance of the Radiant Moon Palace, the mother of Bloodbath turned into a fist-sized red spider. It landed on the branch of the silver stamen gold luster cassia that had yet to evolve to the suzerain grade in front of the Radiant Moon Palace. Once feis reached the suzerain grade, they would have strong territorial awareness. Therefore, unless the 2 feis were familiar with each other, rashly landing on someone else's body was equivalent to a great provocation and offense. After he entered the Radiant Moon Palace, he went straight to the inner palace. Before reaching the entrance of the inner palace, Lin Yuan smelled waves of lotus fragrance. At that moment, Lin Yuan could not help but think of what his master, the Moon Empress, had said before. She wanted to make lotus root powder with the roots of those suzerain lotus feis. Lin Yuan swallowed his saliva and felt a little sorry for those lotus feis that he could see every time he came to the inner palace. The Moon Empress wouldn't really make a move on those lotus fays that had just become suzerain, right? As soon as he entered the inner palace, Lin Yuan saw his master combing the seven-tailed sun-swallowing fox's fur. Mystic Moon was directing Kai Cha and Yin Cha to cut the lotus roots in the lotus pond. This pool of newly promoted suzerain lotus fays all looked weak, helpless, and pitiful. Even the colorful lotuses that were blooming were drooping, appearing very dispirited. He felt that if these lotus fays could make expressions, they would have an expression that said, "Don't come over." Lin Yuan is. Even the flowers are slacking off. Looks like there are too many lotus seeds. It just so happens that His Highness is here. If we add lotus seeds to the lotus root starch, the taste will definitely be improved to another level. Many to the lotus that he said. To say he's suzerain. Suzerain Kai suzerain to say. The moon Lin was king. God demon I demon moon. The lotus even. Said the moon. Try the camellia frost jade cake, made from the camellia flowers we planted in the garden outside the palace, and see if it suits your taste. Try the flower powder jade cake, made from the camellia flowers we grew in the garden outside the palace. See if it suits your taste. Lin Yuan took a bite of the pollen frost jade paste and felt a fragrance in his mouth. There was also the taste of chestnut in the middle, which was very soft and sweet. When the Moon Empress saw Lin Yuan eat the pollen frost jade paste, she was afraid that he would choke, so she poured him a cup of spirit tea. Since you're here today, I'll let Kai Cha and Yin Cha grind a bowl of assorted lotus root powder for you in a while. Since you're here today, I'll let Kai Cha and Yin Cha grind a bowl of assorted lotus root powder for you. These dozens of kinds of suzerain lotus root powder, together with the nectar of the suzerain silver stamen gold luster cassia, should be able to wash away the impurities in your body again, and truly let your body reach a dirt-free state. Lin Yuan reached out and scratched the hair on the back of his head, thinking that every time he came to the Radiant Moon Palace, his master, the Moon Empress, would always make delicious food for him. Usually, she would also let Mystic Moon send all kinds of things to the mansion. There was food, spiritual ingredients, spirit chi clothing, and even strategic class treasures and spatial source type items with spatial teleportation ability. Cold Moon had not returned to the Radiant Moon Palace for a long time. During this time, Lin Yuan had called Chu Si and found out that she had taken her to the most remote of the 32 major cities, Osmanthus City, to train. It had greatly improved Chu Si's horizons and strength during this time. Lin Yuan usually wanted to send something to the Radiant Moon Palace, but the Moon Empress had never accepted it. She would only say, "Master doesn't lack anything. Don't worry about yourself. If you lack anything, just tell Master." In Lin Yuan's opinion, this kind of relationship that only cared for her and did not ask for anything in return was actually kinship. Lin Yuan waved his hand and took out the 3 stomach stones that contained extremely strong energy waves that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out and said, "Master, these 3 cyan crystals are what the ethereal jellyfish's stomach spat out when I contracted it." Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress took the 3 cyan stomach stones from Lin Yuan's hand and said, "Master, these 3 cyan crystals are what the ethereal jellyfish spat out when I contracted it." Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress took the 3 green stomach stones from Lin Yuan's hand and checked them. The energy contained in these 3 stomach stones is almost all condensed from the energy in that bottle of green spirit liquid. They can be considered spiritual ingredients with rich spatial energy. Keep them well. They might be useful in the future. Lin Yuan put away the stomach stones formed by the 3 stomach stones spat out by the ethereal jellyfish. Then he told the Moon Empress about the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, Space Tunnel. Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress was obviously interested. She said, "Why don't you build a space tunnel between the Radiant Moon Palace and your mansion? It will be much more convenient in the future." Lin Yuan also had this purpose. Lin Yuan summoned the ethereal jellyfish and took out the tentacles that he had cut off to set up a spatial node. Then he ordered the ethereal jellyfish to connect the spatial node he had set up in the mansion with the one he had just set up in the Radiant Moon Palace. After receiving Lin Yuan's order, Layers of spatial energy appeared on the ethereal jellyfish's pale red body. These layers of spatial energy collided with each other at the node, faintly opening up a tunnel. He knew he should throw in the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to help the tunnel expand. Before Lin Yuan could throw in a large number of tentacles that he had cut off earlier, a large number of tentacles appeared. The ethereal jellyfish took the initiative to cut off one of its 3 spiral tentacles. It allowed the broken spiral tentacle to melt into the newly formed tunnel. Make up for yesterday's second day. End of chapter. Chapter 393. However, although this tunnel gradually took shape, the energy was still somewhat insufficient. At that moment, Lin Yuan recalled that under True Data, the exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, said that the formation of the space tunnel was after using the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. It could also be supplemented with spatial spiritual materials. Lin Yuan simply took out the green crystal formed by the ethereal jellyfish's stomach and threw it into this tunnel that was about to form. Immediately after, this tunnel extracted a large amount of energy from the green crystal, and Lin Yuan found that he did not need to throw in the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles anymore. This 2-meter-tall tunnel was completely built. Lin Yuan looked at this tunnel formed by spatial energy and stepped into it. Lin Yuan did not feel anything special when he stepped into the space tunnel. He only felt that he had walked through a door, but when he stepped out of this door, the scene changed. Lin Yuan was very familiar with the changed scene, as he was standing in his room in the mansion. Immediately after, Lin Yuan passed through this tunnel and collapsed in the opposite direction. After stepping out of the tunnel, Lin Yuan returned to the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace. The green crystal formed by the ethereal jellyfish's stomach had been reduced by 1/3. The remaining 2/3 of the green crystal fell to the ground. After Lin Yuan picked up this green crystal, he fell into deep thought. When Lin Yuan had just let the ethereal jellyfish use its exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, 2 unexpected things had happened. One was that the ethereal jellyfish's spiral tentacles, which were more than twice as long as ordinary tentacles, could actually detach from the ethereal jellyfish's body. After detaching, it would not cause harm to the ethereal jellyfish's body. The other point was that after the ethereal jellyfish used the spiral tentacles in the center of its body, it could completely rely on extracting a large amount of spatial energy to extend the space tunnel's distance. Lin Yuan could feel that as long as he marked 2 spatial nodes, no matter how far apart they were, as long as he had enough spatial energy to support the opening of this tunnel, he could open a complete space tunnel of infinite length. The Moon Empress immediately saw the crux of this space tunnel's formation. She asked, "Can the ethereal jellyfish's space tunnel rely on spatial energy to increase its distance?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded. The Moon Empress pondered for a few seconds before asking, "What are the conditions for setting up the space tunnel?" Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said, "That's right. We need to use the tentacles of this ethereal jellyfish to set up a space node, and then connect the 2 space nodes to form a space corridor." After saying that, Lin Yuan took out one of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles and handed it to the Moon Empress. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly understood something based on the spatial tunnel he had set up previously. Even if True Data could display the phase abilities and exclusive skills in detail, it would still be useless. The actual effects and strength of skills and exclusive skills could only be determined after real tests. Otherwise, it would just be an armchair strategist. At that moment, the Moon Empress' words caused Lin Yuan to raise his head in shock. "Do you have any plans to go to the continent outside the Radiance Federation to develop?" Upon hearing the Moon Empress' words, Lin Yuan immediately understood what she meant. "Master, could this spatial tunnel be built from the royal capital to the other continents' federations outside the Radiance Federation?" The Moon Empress flipped her hand and took out a gemstone that flickered with intense silver luster. With the spatial shellfish crystals shed from the spatial mother shellfish, it is possible to set up a spatial tunnel from the royal capital to the nearest federation outside the Radiance Federation. Upon hearing the words spatial mother shellfish, Lin Yuan immediately thought of Ostrich Logistics' spatial crystal shellfish. The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan's probing eyes and explained, "You should be thinking about the relationship between the hollow crystal shellfish and the hollow crystal mother shellfish, right? The hollow crystal shellfish and the hollow crystal mother shellfish are really inextricably linked." Upon hearing the Moon Empress say that the spatial shellfish and the spatial mother shellfish were inextricably linked, Lin Yuan guessed it. Is it a hollow crystal shellfish born from the hollow crystal mother shellfish? Lin Yuan thought about the rumors about ostrich logistics. The hollow crystal shellfish was said to be a mutated fae from ostrich logistics research. The empty crystal shellfish had always been in the hands of ostrich logistics. Could it be related to the mother shellfish? Lin Yuan guessed that the hollow crystal shellfish and the spatial mother shellfish were in a subordinate relationship. This was because Lin Yuan could feel that the spatial energy contained in the crystal dropped by the mother shellfish was thousands of times stronger than the green spirit liquid concocted from the hollow crystal shellfish's shell powder. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's guess, the Moon Empress revealed a gentle smile. "You guessed it right, but it's not accurate. Ostrich Logistics' hollow crystal shellfish is just one of the hollow crystal mother shellfish's abilities. This spatial mother shellfish is not a fae or source-type life form, but a sacred source life form." Lin Yuan listened to the Moon Empress' words, which he had never heard of before. This hollow crystal mother shellfish should be Ostrich Logistics' secret all along. But what was a sacred source life form? Before Lin Yuan could ask, the Moon Empress explained to him, like she had during the previous question and answer session. In Class 1 to Class 4 dimensional rifts, the things produced at the spatial hub are called source-type life forms. As the grade of the dimensional rift increases, the number of source-type life forms produced will also increase. When a dimensional rift reaches Class 5, it will no longer produce source-type life forms. When a Class 5 dimensional rift is destroyed, it will produce one and only one sacred source life form. At Class 5, the interior of a dimensional rift is like a complete small world. The sacred source life form contains the laws of a Class 5 dimensional rift's small world. Of course, the sacred source life form has to be compatible with a person's soul. According to the strength of a person's soul, a person can only contract one sacred source life form in their lifetime. However, there are some life forms with powerful souls that can contract two sacred source life forms. After listening to the Moon Empress' explanation, Lin Yuan immediately understood how rare and powerful sacred source life forms were. There were only a few Class 5 dimensional rifts in this world, and the highest combat power in Class 5 dimensional rifts was already equivalent to human Emperor class experts. They might even be slightly stronger than human Emperor class experts. Sacred source life forms contained the laws of heaven and earth, which was equivalent to a law rune. In other words, sacred source life forms were above the laws and could command heaven and earth. Although Lin Yuan was curious, he did not ask the Moon Empress for more information about sacred source life forms. In Lin Yuan's opinion, sacred source life forms were too far away from him. As for whether contracting sacred source life forms was related to the strength of one's soul, Lin Yuan had no idea. Soul power and spiritual energy were different. The soul had always been the most mysterious and untouchable existence. However, Lin Yuan suddenly thought that as a transmigrator, he had lived an extra life. Would his soul be stronger than an ordinary person's? The Moon Empress extended her hand and lovingly stroked Lin Yuan's hair. Sacred source life forms are sealed by the power of laws. No one can find out what's inside and what use they have. However, one thing is certain: there are no weak sacred source life forms. Alright, disciple, let's not talk about sacred source life forms for now. Have you ever thought of building a spatial tunnel from your manor to the Radiance Federations outside? Then, you can go there to absorb the resources you need, develop your faction and train. When the Moon Empress suddenly mentioned sacred source life forms, Mystic Moon had been thinking about it for a while. The Moon Empress had previously said that she would give His Young Highness a sacred source life form on his 20th birthday. Why did she mention it now? His Young Highness had just reached 19 years old. If he were to contract a sacred source life form, and his soul was damaged, it would affect his entire life. However, When the Moon Empress changed the topic, Mystic Moon's heart was finally at ease. Yesterday's third chapter, asking for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 394. Lin Yuan felt the Moon Empress' hand rubbing on his head. Her warm and slender fingers were helping him tidy up the hair on his forehead that had been messed up by the wind before entering the inner palace. Lin Yuan could not help but think of when he was young. His mother always helped him tidy up the hair on his forehead like this. In this life, Lin Yuan did not know why his hair was extremely soft. When a slightly stronger wind blew, the hair on his forehead would become messy. Even if the hair on Lin Yuan's forehead was messed up by the wind, it would not look sloppy. Instead, it had a hint of unruly handsomeness. However, his messy hair made him look a few years younger than he was now. As a transmigrator, Lin Yuan was already an adult soul from birth in this life. He had over 20 years of memories from his previous life. Bits and pieces of his childhood were the most precious memories sealed in Lin Yuan's heart. Since his mother had passed away, Lin Yuan had shouldered all the burdens alone. His messy hair, which no one had helped him tidy up, was once again moved by someone. Lin Yuan felt that his eyes were a little hot. As for what his master, the Moon Empress, had said, did he want to go outside the Radiance Federation to absorb the resources he needed? At the same time, he wanted to develop his own forces and train himself. Of course, Lin Yuan wanted to. However, Lin Yuan had never set foot in the world outside the Radiance Federation, although he was not completely clueless about the world outside the Radiance Federation. Although he was not completely ignorant of the world outside the Radiance Federation, what he knew about the world outside the Radiance Federation was only those common-sense questions that the Moon Empress had mentioned during the Q&A. Lin Yuan believed that he now had the Mother of Bloodbath, a suzerain/Myth 2 expert, and Endless Summer, a suzerain/Myth 3 expert. He already had the capital to set foot in the world outside the Radiance Federation, in terms of martial strength. The Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer were existences that could rival Emperor-class experts in terms of strength. In terms of resources, Lin Yuan controlled the high-quality bronze phase. As long as there were spirit chi professionals, high-quality bronze phase were the most scarce existences. Lin Yuan's faction had just started. If he could step out of the Radiance Federation to develop, then Lin Yuan would be able to eat a huge cake with two sides. The world outside the Radiance Federation gave Lin Yuan a platform to do as he pleased and grow without any scruples. This would only be beneficial to the development of his faction, Sky City. Lin Yuan had always believed in one thing: stand straight where you can see, because you stand steady where you can't see. If Sky City wanted to be stable, it needed more resources and military support. Since it was the place he yearned for, he naturally had to travel through the trials and tribulations. Thus, Lin Yuan spoke seriously and firmly. Teacher, I want to open a space tunnel to explore the world outside the Radiance. When the Moon Empress heard that, the smile on her face widened. You've made the right decision. Go to the outside world of the Radiance Federation and explore. Only then will you know how to develop a real faction. A faction's prestige can only be built by fighting. If a faction's growth isn't done through bloodshed, then it will only be an empty shell in the end. Although the Moon Empress had a smile on her face, her words were extremely serious. Lin Yuan could feel the Moon Empress's pointers and teachings for him from her words. The Moon Empress did not wait for Lin Yuan to speak and continued. The Radiance Federation is full of beautiful mountains and rivers, quiet and peaceful. On one hand, it's because the Radiance Federation dominates a continent and is one of the three major federations. On the other hand, it's because the Radiance Federation has always discouraged life and death struggles among spirit chi professionals. However, the outside world is completely different. People in the outside world would fight to the death for a little bit of resources. It's common for people to fight until their heads bleed. Lin Yuan naturally understood what the Moon Empress meant. He had always known that this world was a world where strength was respected. Only strength was fundamental. Without sufficient strength, one could not keep the corresponding resources at all. Lin Yuan had been accumulating resources with the sole purpose of using these resources to increase his strength. Lin Yuan's faction's development would certainly not stop at the current stability. Lin Yuan had already begun to forge the sword in his hand with a plan, and then sharpen it step by step. However, the white-clothed follower plan had just begun, and the materials for forging the sword in Lin Yuan's hand were not ready yet. Since Lin Yuan had already planned to connect the spatial tunnel from his royal capital to the world outside the Radiance Federation, he had to know very clearly where the other side of the spatial tunnel was connected. Teacher, you said that the energy contained in the hollow crystal mother shellfish can support the opening of the spatial tunnel to the Federation closest to the Radiance Federation. What about the Federation closest to the Radiance Federation? Since Lin Yuan wanted to develop his faction and train himself in the world outside the Radiance Federation, he definitely could not open the other side of the spatial tunnel in a desolate place. Since Lin Yuan wanted to develop his faction and train himself in the world outside the Radiance Federation, he definitely could not open the other side of the spatial tunnel in a desolate place. Rather than that, Lin Yuan might as well go straight into the Radiance Federation's deep mountains and forests. Therefore, Lin Yuan was destined to open the other side of the spatial tunnel to the Federation closest to the Radiance Federation. However, he did not know whether he should develop it secretly in a remote place or openly in the city. Lin Yuan needed to understand the situation before he could make a decision. As Lin Yuan's teacher, the Moon Empress liked to see Lin Yuan's thirst for knowledge the most. Every time she saw Lin Yuan like this, she always wanted to tell him everything she knew in detail. The Federation closest to the Radiance Federation is separated from the Radiance Federation by a vast sea. It's called the Divine Wood Federation on another continent. However, the Divine Wood Federation does not occupy a continent by itself like the Radiance Federation. The Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation share the continent's resources together. The spatial shellfish crystal that fell from the hollow crystal mother shellfish is a little small. Otherwise, you can choose between the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation. When the Moon Empress spoke, she was obviously thinking about something. Mystic Moon broke out in a cold sweat. If the Moon Empress went to Ostrich Logistics Elder Space to pick up the mother shellfish's shell, would Elder Space's depression, which had not been cured, flare up again and become autistic? It was Lin Yuan's first time hearing about the Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation. However, as a healing-type spirit chi professional, Lin Yuan preferred to output. It could be seen that he had the blood of a boar in his bones. At that moment, Lin Yuan's blood was already boiling. Sob sob sob. Please come to QQ to support the original version. Make up a full subscription, save the child. There will be 6 updates today. This is the first update, only the 5th watch was left. Ask for a ticket, end of chapter. Chapter 395. Seeing that the Moon Empress was acting strangely, Mystic Moon hurriedly said, Moon Empress, I heard that Spacetime Elder has been depressed recently and doesn't speak for a few days. He was seriously ill some time ago and has yet to recover. What do you think? When the Moon Empress heard Xian Yu's words, she couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. Elder Spacetime didn't act rashly just because his granddaughter insisted on being a courier. Half a year ago, someone complained and asked for a replacement. What does that old thing's illness have to do with me? However, after Mystic Moon's reminder, the Moon Empress recalled the Spacetime Elder's gloomy expression. The Moon Empress gave up on the idea of going to the Spacetime Elder's place to prick a larger hollow crystal mother shellfish. Thus, the Moon Empress continued to explain the situation of the Divine Wood Federation to him. The Divine Wood Federation's climate is warm and humid all year round, and it is especially suitable for plant phase and spiritual ingredients to grow. The entire Divine Wood Federation can be considered a treasure land with abundant plant phase resources. The Divine Wood Federation's various plant phase produce a lot of spirit fruits, so almost every household in the Divine Wood Federation uses spirit fruits to make wine. Also, I don't know if the people in the Divine Wood Federation are influenced by the environment, but they all love poetry, singing, and even some literary works. After listening to the Moon Empress introduction of the Divine Wood Federation, Lin Yuan began to think about how he should develop in it. At this moment, the Moon Empress spoke again. Although the Divine Wood Federation is a treasure land rich in plant phase, and has precious and powerful plant phase, the Divine Wood Federation doesn't have many plants. However, the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters are extremely scarce. There isn't a single Class 5 creation master in the entire Divine Wood Federation, and the highest-ranked creation masters are only 2 Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters. At this point, the Moon Empress paused slightly and suddenly changed the topic. If you go to the Divine Wood Federation, don't drink too much of the fruit wine there. Their wine is different from ours. Many of the fruit wines brewed by the Divine Wood Federation have added protein-rich insect species phase organs. It is said to enhance the flavor of the fruit wine. When Lin Yuan heard the Moon Empress words, he had a complicated expression. Could an insect species phase internal organs really enhance the flavor of the fruit wine? The bitter and smelly insect species phase organs were added to the intoxicating sweet fruit wine. What kind of immortal taste was that? Even if he was a curious baby, he did not have the interest to try at all. Lin Yuan suddenly thought that the people of the Divine Wood Federation were quite creative. Was this considered simplifying the cultural style of there must be meat when drinking wine? The Moon Empress spoke again. Because the Divine Wood Federation lacks creation master resources, the status of creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation is unimaginably high. The Divine Wood Federation has an aristocratic system. Even a Class 1 creation master is considered an aristocrat in the Divine Wood Federation. If this Class 1 creation master is walking on the streets and feels that he has been offended by the poor, then this Class 1 creation master has the authority to execute the poor on the streets. Upon hearing the Moon Empress introduction of the Divine Wood Federation, Lin Yuan immediately felt the bloody darkness under the Divine Wood Federation's singing and dancing. Even a creation master could casually execute a poor person on the street if he didn't like them. Lin Yuan could completely imagine how unscrupulous high-class creation masters would be in the Divine Wood Federation. However, this situation where creation masters had an extremely high status in the Divine Wood Federation made Lin Yuan's eyes light up. His faction was still in its infancy and needed a lot of spiritual materials and resources. There were a lot of plant phase in the Divine Wood Federation, so it was a good place for him to collect spiritual materials and resources. Lin Yuan then remembered that the Moon Empress had mentioned the other 2 federations on the same continent as the Divine Wood Federation. So he asked her, "Teacher, how is the relationship between the Iron Hammer Federation and the Deep Lush Federation with the Divine Wood Federation?" Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress suddenly looked at her palm and replied, "A world where strength is respected is full of danger." Although the 3 federations appear harmonious on the surface to outsiders, the open and covert struggles are no less than the collision between waves and reefs at sea. The Divine Wood Federation has a warm and humid climate, so it naturally has a lot of food resources. The Iron Hammer Federation is the opposite. The Iron Hammer Federation's climate is dry, and almost the entire continent is dominated by wastelands. On the other hand, the Iron Hammer Federation is the opposite. The Iron Hammer Federation's climate is dry, and almost the entire continent is dominated by wastelands. Even excellent plants like the needled iron bark tree, which can survive 1 rain a year, have records of death in the Iron Hammer Federation. But on the other hand, the Iron Hammer Federation is very rich in her resources, so it has a lot of metal resources that can be used to exchange for other supplies. Lin Yuan was a little confused when he heard the Moon Empress words. According to what you said, the Iron Hammer Federation and the Divine Wood Federation form a perfect complement, so there is bound to be a lot of material exchanges between the 2 federations. In my opinion, these 2 federations should have a very close relationship. Why is their relationship so tense? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Moon Empress smiled slightly and did not answer his question directly. Instead, she asked, You're right, but people are always ambitious. You're right, but people are always ambitious. The Iron Hammer Federation is stronger than the Divine Wood Federation in terms of force. If you were a member of the Iron Hammer Federation now, what choice would you make when faced with a land with abundant resources? Lin Yuan said without thinking, plunder. The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan with appreciation and said, that's right. The people of the Iron Hammer Federation are very tough. They have tried to seize the land of the Divine Wood Federation many times. But the Divine Wood Federation has resisted tenaciously. However, the Divine Wood Federation also paid a huge price for this. Therefore, the Divine Wood Federation hates the Iron Hammer Federation very much. Therefore, the Divine Wood Federation won't let the plant phase produced by the Divine Wood Federation flow into the Iron Hammer Federation to help improve the Iron Hammer Federation's environment. At the same time, the Divine Wood Federation has been eyeing the mineral resources of the Iron Hammer Federation covetously and has secretly attacked the mineral bases of the Iron Hammer Federation countless times. Upon hearing the Moon Empress words, Lin Yuan immediately understood that this was a game between the two major federations. At that moment, the Moon Empress said again, you should be thinking right now that these two federations have already reached the point where one side will not rest until the other is dead. But why are they still maintaining a calm surface? Lin Yuan nodded. Lin Yuan did not understand this. Then we'll have to talk about the third federation on that continent, the Deep Venom Federation. Looking for tickets, there are still 4 more code word, end of chapter. Chapter 396. The Moon Empress smiled and explained, the Deep Brahman Federation is quite interesting. The Deep Brahman Federation is quite interesting. The Deep Brahman Federation is a federation where all of its citizens are scholars and businessmen. Most of the chambers of commerce on that continent are secretly controlled and operated by people from the Deep Brahman Federation. It's also because of these chambers of commerce that the Deep Brahman Federation forms a material chain. This allows a small amount of the materials that the Iron Hammer Federation and the Divine Wood Federation refuse to sell to each other. However, the Deep Brahman Federation is also the most ambitious. At one time, it wanted to use huge resources to control the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation, but it was secretly attacked by the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation at the same time. Since the Deep Brahman Federation only has an advantage in materials, it is the weakest in terms of top experts. Therefore, the Deep Brahman Federation's chambers of commerce are disguised by the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation every year to plunder the supplies controlled by the Deep Brahman Federation's chamber of commerce. Lin Yuan listened to the Moon Empress talk about the relationship between the 3 federations on another continent. He could not help but rub his forehead. The Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Brahman Federation were 3 old foxes who schemed against each other. Each wanted to swallow the other 2, but their relationship formed a triangle that constantly pulled at each other. Although they bit each other, they eventually formed a delicate balance. In the end, a delicate balance was formed. Although it was a pool of clean water on the surface, there was a turbulent undercurrent in the dark. However, this made Lin Yuan even more interested, as he could only catch fish in troubled waters. The more chaotic it was, the more interesting it would be to stir up a storm. The Moon Empress noticed Lin Yuan's interested expression and was a little stunned. She did not expect her disciple to be a little boorish fellow. The Moon Empress suddenly felt that if she sent her disciple to the Iron Hammer Federation, would her disciple use the Iron Hammer Federation's best hammer diplomacy to smash the Iron Hammer Federation's head when facing those boorish fellows who only had muscles in their brains? The Moon Empress was really afraid that after Lin Yuan teleported through the spatial tunnel, he would directly clash with the factions on another continent. The Moon Empress was not afraid that Lin Yuan would cause trouble, but she was afraid that this would make Lin Yuan lose the purpose of developing on another continent. However, Lin Yuan's question immediately dispelled the Moon Empress' worries. The Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan say, "Teacher, I've decided. Teacher, I've decided. I'm going to build a small stronghold near the city of the Divine Wood Federation. Then, I'll slowly make contact with the forces of the Divine Wood Federation. When the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan's words, she was very impressed. Wouldn't it be better to just go to the Divine Wood Federation's big city and reveal my identity as a creation master? Lin Yuan didn't even think about it before speaking. Creation masters have such a high status in the Divine Wood Federation. Even a Class 1 creation master will enjoy the power of life and death. In such an environment, effort and enjoyment are often equal. I believe it isn't easy for creation masters to survive in the Divine Wood Federation. The Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation were connected to each other on the same continent. A creation master would be in high demand wherever they went, and would be able to develop well no matter where they went. The Divine Wood Federation was already lacking in creation master resources, so it gave creation masters preferential treatment. The creation masters would also have firm control over the creation masters and prevent them from leaking out. Therefore, the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters were destined to give up their relative freedom. Moreover, if the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters wanted to compete, they would not only have to give up this relative freedom, but their lives might also be in danger. The Divine Wood Federation had rich Fey resources. As long as there were more high-class creation masters, the Divine Wood Federation's strength could develop rapidly. However, even though the Divine Wood Federation had treated creation masters so well for so many years, the number of creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation had not increased. Therefore, it was obvious that the Iron Hammer Federation and the Deep Lush Federation must have made a move on the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters in the dark. Many of the creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation were probably on the path of growth and had unknowingly reincarnated. Lin Yuan had already seen the chaos of people's hearts in the Valley of the Controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. The creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation would only have such a high status in the Divine Wood Federation when creation master resources were scarce. Therefore, Lin Yuan could not help but guess how the number of creation masters in the Federation had not increased. How was it related to the other creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation? However, the more it was like this, the more Lin Yuan wanted to go to the Divine Wood Federation to train. No one was born a genius without studying, and it was the same for Lin Yuan. Even if Lin Yuan had lived an extra life, he still had a lot to grow in. Therefore, the more chaotic the place was, the faster Lin Yuan's growth could be accelerated. When the Moon Empress saw that Lin Yuan could see clearly, she didn't remind him anymore, and told him not to be rash when encountering trouble. The Moon Empress tapped her finger on the table and asked seriously, "Do you know what a carcinoma Fey is?" When Lin Yuan saw how serious the Moon Empress was, he sat up straight and became exceptionally serious. Lin Yuan didn't know what a carcinoma Fey was, so he shook his head. However, since the Moon Empress was so serious, it was obvious that she was talking about something that he needed to pay attention to. Those life forms that aren't powerful, but are able to destroy low-grade life forms are called carcinoma Feys. For example, the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts that appeared in Golden Edge City 3 years ago. Cancer organisms are rare mutated individuals that appear in the natural world for unknown reasons. Such carcinoma Feys do occasionally appear in the Radiance Federation, but most of the time, before the spirit guards can cause any substantial harm, they will be taken in by the spirit guards. But the Divine Wood Federation doesn't have such an organization like the spirit guards. Plenty of carcinoma Feys are collected by people with intentions and are used as weapons. After hearing the Moon Empress words, Lin Yuan felt his blood run cold. Back when the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts appeared in Golden Edge City, it had caused Golden Edge City's overall strength to fall from the 7th position among the 32 major cities to the last position. It was a complete disaster, but Lin Yuan didn't expect that the culprits of this disaster were the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts. At the start of this disaster, the adventurers outside of Golden Edge City suddenly discovered that ants that were usually invisible had suddenly increased. When these ants appeared individually, they were very afraid of humans. Even if they appeared in groups, they wouldn't run far away when they saw humans, but they would try to take a detour. Therefore, most of the adventurers didn't pay attention to them. Even the spirit guards didn't pay much attention to these ants that weren't even the size of a mung bean. However, just after 3 days, when the people of Golden Edge City woke up in the morning, the people of Golden Edge City were shocked to discover that the outside of the city was filled with black ant colonies that stretched as far as the eye could see. Asking for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 397. By the time the spirit guards reacted, it was already too late. These sawtooth devour ants, which were no bigger than mung beans, couldn't find food outside the city. Driven by hunger, they started to invade Golden Edge City. As long as these sawtooth devour ants saw something, they would use their sawtooth-like mouths to start gnawing and devouring the debris. This caused a large number of Golden Edge City's buildings to collapse. Of course, the sawtooth devour ants didn't just devour the buildings. At the same time, there were ordinary people and low-rank spirit chi professionals who couldn't escape in time. This disaster came with great momentum and didn't give the spirit guards any time to prepare. However, the spirit guards immediately reacted to the situation and began to provide assistance. Logically speaking, the ants in the natural world were produced by the queen ant, and all kinds of ants would work together to maintain the survival of the ant colony. However, when the spirit guards realized that they couldn't find the queen ant based on the ant colony's movements, they looked for a high-ranking scholar. Through research and experiments, they found that when each mung bean-sized sawtooth devour ant ate enough food, it would activate the ant queen gene in its body and produce 100 ant eggs in its abdomen. It would then use its body as nutrients to nurture the 100 ant eggs in its abdomen. This process didn't depend on time, but on how much food the sawtooth devour ants ate. After eating enough food, the sawtooth devour ants could complete the ant queen gene's awakening within 3 hours and use its own death as the price to incubate 100 ant eggs. After eating enough food, the sawtooth devourer ant could complete the awakening of the ant queen gene within 3 hours. Then, at the cost of its own death, it would hatch hundreds of its own kind. This discovery made the spirit guards despair. These sawtooth devour ants were different from the alien insects that appeared in the alien insect dimensional rift. There might be a lot of alien insects, but the smallest of them was the size of a house cat and could be effectively attacked. Moreover, as long as an expert entered the alien insect dimensional rift's entrance and retrieved the source type item, the alien insect dimensional rift would dissipate. There might be a lot of alien insects, but the smallest of them was the size of a house cat and could be effectively attacked. The strength of these sawtooth devour ants might not be comparable to a normal fae, even if there were 100 of them. A child would be able to stomp a few sawtooth devour ants to death. However, there were simply too many sawtooth devour ants, which weren't even the size of a mung bean. The ant colony would be able to flatten everything by eating. Based on the sawtooth devour ant's reproduction method, even if there was only one sawtooth devour ant left, the disaster wouldn't be considered over. How could he kill all of these little things? If he found the Radiance Federation's super experts and used a carpet attack within the sawtooth devour ant's range of activity, it might be effective. But if he really did that, Golden Edge City would really turn into dust, and all the wealth would be destroyed. However, Golden Edge City was plagued by misfortune. Another carcinoma fae, the poison dust locusts, had appeared. However, this new carcinoma fae, the poison dust locusts, had saved the precarious Golden Edge City. When the carcinoma fae, the poison dust locusts, appeared, they immediately treated the sawtooth devour ants as food. The two types of carcinoma faes, the sawtooth devour ant and the poison dust locusts, were ultimately victorious. Under the counterattack of the sawtooth devourer ants, only a few poison dust locusts remained. At that moment, the spirit guards took action and captured the remaining sawtooth devourer ants and poison dust locusts in one fell swoop. When high-star scholars and fae observers were researching, it was equivalent to saving Golden Edge City's poison dust locusts. They discovered that the cancerous poison dust locusts could release poison dust while flying. But after some research, the high-star scholars and Fae observers were drenched in cold sweat. The poison dust released by the poison dust locusts was actually a kind of emotional toxin that could turn love into hatred. The deeper the love, the purer the hatred, the purer it would be. If Golden Edge City's ordinary people and spirit chi professionals were infected on a large scale, then Golden Edge City would become the world's most terrifying hatred purgatory. At that time, a Class 5 scholar had even published an article saying that it was fortunate that the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts had appeared together. Otherwise, it would have been a city-destroying disaster. His master, the Moon Empress, had mentioned that some people in the Divinewood Federation were collecting these carcinoma fays and using them as weapons. This allowed Lin Yuan to understand the craziness of the spirit chi professionals on the other continent. Just as he was thinking about this, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his thoughts were a little rigid. Perhaps the other continent was the true appearance of the spirit chi professional world, without the protection of a powerful federation. Lin Yuan looked at the Moon Empress' serious and concerned expression, and knew that his master had said so much to explain the Divinewood Federation's situation to him. At the same time, she was reminding him to pay attention to his safety. Lin Yuan let out a bright smile and revealed his white teeth. "Don't worry, master. I will pay attention to my safety." Lin Yuan, who had lived 2 lifetimes, knew the preciousness of life better than ordinary people. Only when one was alive would one be able to shoulder kinship, friendship, and responsibility. Therefore, Lin Yuan was very prudent when doing things and wouldn't easily risk his safety. When the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan's reply, she knew that Lin Yuan understood her other meaning. Just as the Moon Empress was about to give Lin Yuan another piece of pollen frost jade cake, Kai Cha happened to walk over with the ground assorted lotus root starch. Kai Cha placed the assorted lotus root starch in front of Lin Yuan and said, "Young lord, the Moon Empress asked me to prepare the lotus root starch is ready." The lotus root starch that the Moon Empress asked me to prepare is ready and served. Lin Yuan saw that the lotus root starch that Kai Cha brought over was pink in color. It was also faintly emitting a kind of gold and silver luster. It was obvious that the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar was added. A fresh and sweet fragrance flowed into Lin Yuan's nose from the assorted lotus root starch, making Lin Yuan feel as though thousands of lotus flowers were blooming in his mind. Just the fragrance from the lotus root starch made Lin Yuan feel as though the depths of his mind had been cleaned by someone. An extremely relaxed feeling made Lin Yuan feel as though he was lying on a cloud. That was probably the case of the saying, "Only by looking at the lotus flower's cleanliness will one know that one's heart isn't tainted." Lin Yuan looked at the lotus root starch that Kai Cha had brought over, and then at the suzerain lotus phase in the pond. He felt immense pressure. If he were to drink this bowl of lotus root starch in front of these suzerain lotus phase, what would these lotus phase think? Would they feel excited? This was no different from chopping off a blackback mountain boar's leg and barbecuing it in front of the boar. After barbecuing it, what was the difference between asking the blackback mountain boar if it wanted to eat it? This was completely drawing aggro. When the Moon Empress saw Lin Yuan sneaking glances at the lotus phase in the pond, she couldn't help but smile and say, "In a while, go to your pavilion and drink this lotus root starch again. In a while, go to your pavilion and drink this lotus root starch again. By then, you will be cleansing the impurities in your body again. Previously, you cleansed the impurities on your body. This time, you will be cleansing the impurities from your soul." The silver stamen gold luster cassia cleanses the body in the mortal world and the soul in the heavenly world. However, cleansing the impurities on the soul is not as easy as cleansing the impurities on the body. Recently, due to the change of environment, coupled with the fact that something had happened at home, the updates were not timely and had to be constantly updated. Let's talk about the daily updates. It was still 3 chapters a day. After releasing this chapter, Button still owed 2 chapters. In addition to today's 3 chapters, it meant that he would have to release 5 chapters. Today, he would try his best to release all of them without owing. Then I still owe your little fairy is my 5 chapters reward. I will try my best to add more chapters in the next few days. There are also book friends who are asking about the love line of this book. Is it a single female lead or no female lead? Asking for votes, support, recommendation votes, monthly votes, la la la. End of this chapter. Chapter 398. He recalled the time when he had consumed the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. He didn't even have the time to carefully feel the sweet and fragrant osmanthus fragrance in the silver stamen gold luster nectar. He felt as if a bolt of lightning had exploded in his abdomen. An intense pain spread from his abdomen to his internal organs. Finally, the intense pain was transmitted from his organs to his limbs, as if it was going to tear his body into pieces inch by inch. Although using the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar to cleanse his body of impurities, it was equivalent to his entire body being reborn. However, the pain they had to experience during this process was 100 times more torturous than death. Now his master, the Moon Empress, had said that cleansing the soul's impurities wasn't as easy as cleansing the body's impurities. He knew that after he drank the suzerain lotus root powder, and the nectar made from the suzerain silver stamen gold luster cassia osmanthus, he would not be able to drink it. It would be an unbearable torture. He had no understanding of the soul, so what would it look like after washing away the impurities on the soul? Lin Yuan could not help but look forward to it. The Moon Empress instructed Shi Cha, who was holding a bowl of assorted lotus root starch. Bring this bowl of lotus root starch to Xiaoyuan first, and then fill the hot spring with water. Shi Cha responded before bowing and retreating from the rear hall. She was busy helping Lin Yuan clean up and set up the hot spring in the pavilion. The Moon Empress told him some secrets about the Divine Wood Federation for a while. After a while, seeing that it was almost time, he walked out of the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace and headed toward the pavilion where he usually lived. There were all sorts of rare fays outside the Radiant Moon Palace. These fays seemed to have been released into the wild, as they ran all over the Leaning Moon Mountain. Right now, there were plenty of precious fays playing outside the Radiant Moon Palace. However, he was not in the mood to look at the surrounding scenery as usual. Instead, he covered his stomach with his hand. He was preparing himself for another round of sweet torture. When Lin Yuan walked to the door of his pavilion in the Radiant Moon Palace, he happened to see a squirrel fay holding a nut that was half the size of its body and constantly knocking it. However, after knocking for a long time, the squirrel fay still couldn't crack the shell of the nut. At that moment, Lin Yuan's line of sight met with the squirrel fay's. When Lin Yuan saw this squirrel fay, he immediately recognized it as a healing-type fay, the pine needle spring return mouse. Those giant nuts were the pine nuts of the gold fay, iron pine, that was planted on the Leaning Moon Mountain. This pine needle spring return rat was only a silver fay, so it obviously couldn't open the pine nuts of this gold iron pine. The pine needle spring return rat was extremely intelligent and had high intelligence among rodent fays. When the pine needle spring return rat saw Lin Yuan rubbing his stomach, it looked down at the huge iron pine nuts in its hand. The pine needle spring rejuvenation mouse held the pine nuts of the iron pine and rubbed them on its fluffy big tail with reluctance. Then, he looked at Lin Yuan's hand that was covering his stomach and carried the huge pine nut to Lin Yuan's feet before lifting it up. It was as if he was saying, "I'm looking at you rubbing your stomach. You seem to be very hungry. I'll let you eat this big baby." Lin Yuan squatted down and took the pine nuts from the pine needle spring return rat. Lin Yuan had clearly seen the pine needle spring return rat's small movements. This little fellow obviously wanted to eat it, but when it saw him rubbing his stomach, it shared the pine nuts with him. Lin Yuan understood that a large part of the reason for this situation was that there was a lot of food on the Leaning Moon Mountain. However, he had to admit that the pine needle spring return rat warned him. When the pine needle spring return rat saw Lin Yuan take the pine nuts, it turned around and scurried into the distance. It planned to find some nuts to eat on the Leaning Moon Mountain. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan urged the amber button-shaped source sand on his sleeve to turn it into a wisp of fine sand. When this wisp of fine sand exerted force, it crushed the shell of the iron pine nut. Lin Yuan took this huge pine nut and threw it toward the pine needle spring return rat's running route. This time, the pine needle spring return rat immediately experienced the joy of a pie falling from the sky. The pine needle spring return rat was a little puzzled. It had just given out an iron pine nut. So why did it gain an iron pine nut? When the pine needle spring rat turned its head, it found that there was no one behind it. At that moment, Lin Yuan had already entered the pavilion. Xicha was waiting at the pavilion's entrance for Lin Yuan's return. Upon seeing Lin Yuan enter, Xicha hurriedly bowed and said, "Lin Yuan, I'm here. Your Highness, the hot spring is ready. I've also added some morning lotus dew in it. It can help you cleanse your soul in the hot spring, removing the impurities from your soul." The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth could not help but twitch. How painful was it to wash away the impurities in the soul? The morning lotus clear dew was the condensation of dew from the lotus leaves of high-grade lotus phase at dawn. Among them, the effect of restraining one's mind was comparable to anesthetics used in physical surgery. After Xicha left, Lin Yuan took the bowl of assorted lotus root starch to the hot spring and gulped down the bowl of lotus root starch that had been craving the suzerain silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. Then he entered the hot spring. As soon as the lotus root starch entered his mouth, Lin Yuan felt a kind of intoxicating happiness. The lotus root starch felt warm and very comfortable in his stomach. This comfortable feeling spread from his stomach to his 5 viscera and 6 bowels, before finally transmitting to his limbs. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little puzzled. How was this not easy? This comfortable feeling could not be any better. However, when this comfortable feeling rose to his brain, Lin Yuan felt a chill run down his spine. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that he had become Crazy Dave, and there was a large wave of zombies frantically gnawing on his brain. This feeling was not the kind of pain that came from having one's skull split open and crushed. Instead, it was a piercing pain in the deepest part of his mind that was on the verge of being crushed. He could not find the exact location of the pain, so he could only grit his teeth and endure it. The pain dominated Lin Yuan's nerves, making him unable to even roar instinctively in the pool. He could only empty his mind and passively feel the pain in the deepest part of his mind. At that moment, under this extreme pain, Lin Yuan seemed to see the soul world in the deepest part of his mind that he had never pried into. Lin Yuan could only see 2 turbid illusory figures in the depths of his mind. Black-brown fragments constantly floated on the surface of these 2 turbid illusory figures and were peeled off. As the black-brown fragments were peeled off, these 2 turbid illusory figures became more and more transparent and solid. When Lin Yuan felt these black-brown fragments being peeled off again, these 2 turbid illusory figures became more and more transparent and solid. Lin Yuan felt that the memories of his previous and current lives were becoming increasingly clear. Even those fragments that were suddenly lost and smoothed over the years were all clearly appearing in front of him. Ask for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 399. At that moment, Lin Yuan's mind was like a trotting horse lantern as he walked the path that he had walked in both lifetimes. The instant he finished walking the path of both lifetimes in his mind, Lin Yuan felt that the depths of his mind suddenly became unprecedentedly clear. This feeling of clarity made Lin Yuan feel that everything in the world had become refreshing, and his thinking had become more transparent. However, under that intense pain, Lin Yuan had already completely collapsed and did not have the strength to move now. The lotus flowers in the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace's lotus pond had actually just reached the suzerain grade. They had just comprehended the willpower rune and woken up from their slumber. Their lotus roots being severed at this time would greatly affect their foundation. At that moment, the Moon Empress was pouring a bottle of dark green spirit liquid into this lotus pond. Once this dark green spirit liquid entered the lotus pond, the lotus phase that had just been severed immediately absorbed the energy in this dark green spirit liquid. It was to repair the damaged roots of these lotus phase when their lotus roots were severed. Moon Empress, according to your instructions, The amount of lotus root starch and silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar in young lord's bowl of assorted lotus root starch has been doubled. When Shicha said this, she did not understand the Moon Empress' intention. One portion was enough to cleanse the soul. If it was doubled, then the extra double would be wasted for no reason. Even if the Moon Empress doted on young lord, it would be a pity to waste such a good thing. The Moon Empress said coldly, "Well done. Well done. This extra portion will allow little Yuan to immediately recover the overdrawn energy in his body to its optimal state after cleansing his soul. At the same time, it can also form a layer of protective film in the soul." Shicha did not say much after hearing the Moon Empress' words, but she already understood that the Moon Empress did not just dote on young lord. There was no need to use such a good thing to restore the overdrawn body to its best state. He could simply eat some nourishing spiritual ingredients and recuperate for a period of time to make up for it. The layer of protective film formed in the soul was only temporary. Perhaps in less than a year's time, the energy barrier formed in his soul would naturally dissipate. Although it could withstand the damage to the soul once a year, Shicha still felt that it was appalling to use such a method. Even so, Shicha still felt that using such a method was appalling. Lin Yuan was weak, helpless, and pitiful as he lay in the hot spring. Even after an hour, Lin Yuan felt that there was still no obvious effect. This was because the process just now had exhausted his body too severely. Fortunately, he still had the strength to move his fingers. He took out the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that his master had given him from his diamond face storage box. Fortunately, Lin Yuan had already separated the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. The entire jar of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar, that could be called a bucket, was divided into groups of 10 drops. Otherwise, he would not be able to carry the large jar of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar with the strength of only a finger. A small bottle contained 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar, and Lin Yuan felt as though he had come back to life. However, even if he consumed these 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Lin Yuan still felt that his overdrawn body had not completely recovered. This surprised Lin Yuan. It should be known that every drop of diamond-grade silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar contained extremely rich energy. Lin Yuan did not dare to imagine how much energy his body had overdrawn from the intense pain just now. He took out another 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar and drank them. Lin Yuan felt that his body's overdrawn energy had finally been replenished. This was when Lin Yuan began to try to enter the depths of his mind to see his soul. Lin Yuan found that he could not do it no matter what. Lin Yuan scratched the back of his head. Logically speaking, a normal person should only have one soul. But I have two. What's going on? Lin Yuan changed into his spirit chi clothes and went to find his master, the Moon Empress. He then left one of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles for Mystic Moon. After some time, Mystic Moon would bring the tentacle to a more suitable location in the Divine Wood Federation. At that time, Lin Yuan could open a spatial tunnel from here to the Divine Wood Federation. Then, Lin Yuan left the Radiant Moon Palace. When Lin Yuan walked to the silver stamen gold luster cassia's side in front of the palace, the mother of Bloodbath jumped from the silver stamen gold luster cassia's treetop to Lin Yuan's shoulder. When the mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan, it was surprised to find that Lin Yuan was different from when he had just entered. Although there was not the slightest change in appearance, his spirit or temperament seemed to have directly improved by a level. This temperament that seemed to point to the true nature made the mother of Bloodbath feel that even if it did not know Lin Yuan and was not his path protector, it would also give Lin Yuan a natural favorable impression. This was because Lin Yuan's temperament of returning to the true nature made it very easy for fays to get close to him. After leaving the Leaning Moon Mountain, the mother of Bloodbath transformed into a human form and put on the cloud pattern mask made by Hu Quan. Lin Yuan also put on the mask with the majestic Sky City pattern on his face. The mother of Bloodbath's strange and pleasant voice rang in Lin Yuan's ears. Did you personally go to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce this time, because it encountered some trouble? Lin Yuan looked at the mother of Bloodbath with some surprise. He asked, "Didn't you comprehend the blood law rune? Why do you know mind reading?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the mother of Bloodbath rolled its eyes at him and snorted. "If there was nothing, why would you bring a damn homebody out? How long has it been since you came back from the depths of the endless forest and stayed in the mansion?" Lin Yuan had been communicating with Listen on the phone these few days, and knew that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was facing the suppression of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce started as a chamber of commerce, but it had now begun to set foot in other fields. In terms of scale, it was more than 10 times larger than the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that Listen controlled. It could be called a new emerging faction. Previously, Listen had heard that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce only had 2 king-class experts at its peak. However, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had as many as 6 king-class experts. Among them, 2 were pinnacle king-class existences. Now the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce did not even have 1 king-class expert. This caused Listen to struggle at death's door, under the suppression of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, without any room to fight back. Lin Yuan had previously helped Listen promote those 2 bronze/flawless phase to bronze/epic. It could be considered helping the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce survive a certain calamity. However, even if the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had left Indigo Azure City, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was biting it tighter and tighter. Asking for tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 400. When Lin Yuan and Listen were on the phone, he could clearly feel that Listen was completely holding on to the current situation. However, it was undeniable that Listen was very motivated. Listen had taken the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to rely on him, and had sworn an oath with the willpower rune. In that case, he would have to be responsible for Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Soon, Lin Yuan and the mother of Bloodbath arrived at the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan saw a rather large white house in front of him. It was decorated very simply on the outside without any decorations. From time to time, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's employees would take out or move various face storage boxes. Ostrich Logistics exclusive couriers would then complete the online supply of goods. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce no longer had any offline resources. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's offline resources had been completely devoured by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce through commercial competition. Fortunately, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources were very complicated, and the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce didn't know where to start. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the 2 employees who had come out to move the face storage box whispering to each other. "Old Zhao, do you think we can get through this? The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce is coming in aggressively. It seems like they won't give up until they achieve their goal. We'll just do our job. Anyway, we can't help. I believe the president will have a solution. By the way, did the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce come to poach you? Those bastards from the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce have come to me several times, but I've rejected them all. I've worked here for half my life. I'm indebted to the old and young presidents. No matter how much the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce offers, I won't go." Upon hearing the 2 employees of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce whispering to each other, the mother of Bloodbath said with some surprise, "The employees of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce are quite loyal." Lin Yuan shook his head. Even the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's ordinary employees were poached by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. In that case, those who are still in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce should be people who are unwilling to leave or have other purposes for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The mother of Bloodbath frowned slightly. Undercover. Lin Yuan's face darkened. Since the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has cut off the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's offline resources, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can only make use of online resources now. The mother of Bloodbath said when it saw Lin Yuan's expression darken. "What? Worried about the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's future?" Lin Yuan shook his head upon hearing that. He was not worried about the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's future, but about the safety of the remaining employees. The mass-produced objects made of completely jade-textured powder were simply in short supply in the market. If objects made of jade-textured wood were said to be treasured by the rich and powerful families. Thus, items made from jade-textured powder were the favorites of wealthy families with some background. Therefore, even if the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce lost all its online and offline resources, as long as it was a chamber of commerce recognized by the Radiance Federation, it had the functions of a chamber of commerce. If he poured these scarce resources into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, he would be able to let it develop again regardless of the obstacles. However, as the saying goes, the dagger will be revealed when the map is unraveled. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had been plotting against the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and had already infiltrated the ordinary employees. This was enough to show how determined the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was to destroy the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce crushed the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce several times, in terms of resources and strength. If they lost the patience to slowly nibble away at the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, would they use force? A loud noise exploded out of thin air in the quiet room. A middle-aged man with a full beard was slamming the table with his hand and yelling nonstop. "Big brother! I don't know why young Master Zheng is so concerned about the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. We've eaten all the offline resources. Only the framework and miscellaneous online resources are left, and I find them too thin. Do you think young Master Zheng is sick?" Another slightly older middle-aged man was holding a wine pot with a dragon beast engraved on it and pouring wine into a cup. Even his face, which was still calm after the loud noise, suddenly changed, and he shouted angrily, "Impudent! Is young Master Zheng someone you can talk to? How many times have I told you to be careful with your words and actions? Why don't you take it to heart?" The older middle-aged man glared fiercely at the middle-aged man with a full beard. "Big brother, it's just the two of us. If there were outsiders, we wouldn't say such things." The older middle-aged man shouted angrily again. "You should be more careful when it's just the two of us. Otherwise, if you say it's a habit, how can our Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce still receive young Master Zheng's resources?" The bearded middle-aged man didn't seem to care at all, and immediately said angrily, "Big brother, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is so thin and has nothing, and it's so hard to deal with. Why do we have to spend so much effort? We might as well go all the way and settle it cleanly." At this point, the bearded middle-aged man revealed an ominous glint. He was like a little bear that had been hungry for half a month on the mountain and was eager to hunt. The older middle-aged man was calmly drinking the strong liquor in his cup. He picked up the wine pot with the dragon pattern on it and carefully tasted it. He said unhurriedly, "We definitely have to use force, but not now. You don't always use force. Use your brain more. You still have a lot to learn." The bearded middle-aged man strode forward, picked up a wine cup on the table, and placed it in front of the older middle-aged man. "I'm thirsty too. Pour me some." The older middle-aged man took the dragon wine pot and poured a cup of strong liquor for his younger brother. "Aren't you curious why young Master Zheng is putting so much effort into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that even you and I don't think highly of?" As he spoke, the older middle-aged man's eyes flickered with a calculating glint. At this time, there was a knock on the door, followed by a shout from the person at the door. "Great President, Second President, Elder Fei's news has come back." The middle-aged man with a full beard said angrily, "Bring it in." After the person who came to deliver the news handed in a paper envelope, he immediately retreated. The older middle-aged man took the letter and opened it. A satisfied look appeared on his face. The middle-aged man with a full beard moved his bare face closer and looked at the words on the surface. He was a little surprised when he saw them. "Big brother, is this the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resource?" The older middle-aged man slapped the paper envelope on the table and said, "Let's see how the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can hold on now. One night watch asking for tickets." End of this chapter. Chapter 401. The middle-aged man with a full beard picked up the piece of paper in disbelief. After glancing at it again, he asked curiously, "Big brother, why is this a paper document?" A mocking smile appeared on the face of the older middle-aged man. The person who spread the news is afraid of leaving evidence and doesn't want to lose his loyalty to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce on the surface. The bearded middle-aged man coughed in dissatisfaction. "Big brother, don't keep us guessing." Seeing that his younger brother was so anxious, the older middle-aged man said, "Apart from Listen, only old butler Chienda, who has served the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce for 3 generations, knows such important news. Who do you think told me this news?" The bearded middle-aged man was even more surprised. "This Chienda is very loyal. I promised to give him 2 bronze/flawless phase and 200,000 radiance dollars. But he refused to tell me the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources. I asked him to name his price, but that old fart still wouldn't budge. How did you manage to deal with someone who isn't even afraid of death, big brother?" The slightly older middle-aged man used his hand to rub the wine pot with the pattern of a dragon beast on it, as he said in a calm manner, "I got Elder Fei to capture Chienda's son and 2 grandsons. Then I got Elder Fei to implant the mind-controlling silkworm goo larvae into Chienda's son's body. Then I got Elder Fei to release Chienda's son. Just 3 days later, Chienda sent a message saying that he wanted to hand over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources to me. Chienda isn't afraid of death, but Chienda is afraid that his son will die, and he's afraid that I'll attack his 2 grandsons." The bearded middle-aged man's eyes lit up as he listened. After listening to the older middle-aged man, the bearded middle-aged man couldn't help but say, "Big brother, since we have obtained the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources, why don't we let Elder Fei take Chienda's?" Before the bearded middle-aged man could finish his sentence, the older middle-aged man interrupted his younger brother's words and said, "You failed to live up to your expectations. How many times have I told you that credibility is the most important thing for the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce to develop its forces? Why haven't you understood? If this gets out, even the Zheng family will have scruples when investing resources in us, let alone other factions that will exclude us." The bearded middle-aged man habitually raised his wine cup and said, "I remember Big Brother's words. I'll remember Big Brother's words. I know I was wrong. I'll fuck you up." When the older middle-aged man heard this, he slammed the wine pot in his hand onto the table. He felt that his beloved dragon beast wine pot was not worth looking at anymore. "Big brother." Lin Yuan looked at Listen and asked, "You can't hold on for a week anymore, right?" Listen's eyes were red from not sleeping for the past few days, and his expression was full of exhaustion. "Listen up, Listen. Listen, Lin, up. I won't be able to hold on for another 3 days. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce should have just grasped my online resources at this time. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce won't be able to swallow my online resources in less than 3 days." Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan raised his brows slightly. "How do you know that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources have been lost?" Upon hearing that, Listen's expression became somewhat pained and cold at the same time. "Grandpa Qian has been supporting me for so many years, but when I went to look for him 3 days ago, he wasn't at the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. When he came back the next day, he looked at me with vague guilt in his eyes, and he didn't say much. Only Grandpa Qian and I know about the online resources on my side." Listen stopped talking. However, Lin Yuan did not speak after hearing that. Instead, he looked at Listen, wanting him to continue speaking. When Listen saw Lin Yuan's eyes, he understood what he meant and continued speaking. He continued, "After this matter is over, I'll send Grandpa Qian away from the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to Indigo Azure City for retirement. In the future, all the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's matters will have nothing to do with him." As soon as Listen finished speaking, Lin Yuan raised his hand slightly. A platinum face storage box landed in front of Listen. Lin Yuan said, "There are 1,350 items of different sizes here. Without the online resources, can these items hold on?" Listen picked up the platinum face storage box, and the fatigue on his face was swept away. Although Listen's eyes were red because he had not slept for the past few days, there was no change in his eyes. At that moment, Listen's eyes were filled with unparalleled confidence. These 1,350 items are equivalent to an investment of 13.5 million radiance dollars, and these items are top-notch resources. If I can't hold on, how can I dare to make a promise to let the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce become a rising faction in 4 months? The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up. Hu Quan found 27 Class 3 Spirit Craftsmen, which is 70 more than the expected 200 items per day. You just have to develop the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce well. I'll solve the problem of military resources for you. Lin Yuan had already started the white-clothed followers plan. Before the spatial tunnel to the Divine Wood Federation was opened, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was the best home for the white-clothed followers. Within 4 months, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would rely on these items made of completely jade-textured wood powder to advance into a rising faction in its current situation. It was unknown how many pairs of eyes were spying in the dark, and how many hungry wolves wanted to pounce forward and tear apart the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's flesh. He wanted to share the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's feast. At that time, if the turbulent listening Heron Chamber of Commerce did not have the support of king-class combat power, the cold currents mixed with wind and rain would soon blow the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into pieces. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen's eyes lit up, and he spoke quickly. If you can guarantee that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has enough combat power to support it, then I'm confident in letting the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce hit the threshold of a rising faction within 3 months. Lin Yuan did not respond to Listen. In Lin Yuan's opinion, even with so many resources, it was already extremely difficult for Listen to achieve the transformation into a rising faction within 4 months. In Lin Yuan's opinion, Listen's 3-month period was a little harsh. At that moment, the strange and pleasant voice of the mother of Bloodbath, which had been silent all this while, sounded a little cold. A king-class expert dares to eavesdrop unscrupulously? Does he really think that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has no one? Second update, asking for votes. Staying up all night writing, so sleepy, I only finished typing at 5 in the morning, boo-hoo. Asking for support. End of this chapter. Chapter 402. The mother of Bloodbath had spoken for a long time, but no one responded. Lin Yuan scanned the empty room with his eyes but didn't find anything. However, Lin Yuan knew that since the mother of Bloodbath had said so, it was destined that a king-class expert was eavesdropping on his conversation with Listen. At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath's voice sounded again. However, compared to before, Lin Yuan could clearly hear the strong killing intent in the mother of Bloodbath's words. Why? Do you want me to invite you out instead of coming out? All of a sudden, a black figure appeared by the window. A black-robed, white-haired, skinny old man suddenly appeared at the window. He was as abrupt as a bat that suddenly appeared in front of the window at noon. The old man broke the window with a kick, then jumped into the room with a high and mighty look on his face. There was an exceptionally ugly and ferocious-looking insect species, Fey, lying on each of the old man's shoulders. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check the attributes of these 2 ugly insect species Feys. Fey name: Mind-controlling silkworm goo Fey species. Silkworm/thought silkworm, Fey grade, Diamond 4 out of 10. Fey type: Dark/poison Fey quality, Fantasy 2. Fey name: Blood-toothed cricket Fey species. Wingless cricket/toothed cricket Fey grade, Diamond 3 out of 10. Fey type: Blood/poison Fey quality, Fantasy 3. Lin Yuan looked at the attributes of these 2 insect species Feys, and then at the black-robed, white-haired old man. This old man's strength is really not bad. One of the 2 poison species Feys is good at cursing, and the other is good at assassination. At the same time, they are both high-grade fantasy breeds. Among them, the Diamond 4/Fantasy 2 mind-controlling silkworm goo needed to devour a large number of hearts to enhance the curse effect before casting its curse ability. The Diamond 3/Fantasy 3 blood-toothed cricket was also an insect species, Fae, that usually needed to drink a lot of blood. Such a combination of insidious insect species Faes showed that this old man was not a good person. Tisk tsk tsk. Little girl. You do have some eyesight to be able to discover this old man's existence. After the old man finished speaking, Lin Yuan cursed inwardly. Although the mother of Bloodbath had an extremely strong foodie attribute in the mansion, and was extremely friendly to the people in the mansion, it didn't seem to care about the mother of Bloodbath. However, it was undeniable that the mother of Bloodbath was an insect species Fae. Furthermore, it was a spider Fae, which was the cruelest among the insect species Faes. The law rune that the mother of Bloodbath had mastered was the blood law rune. Only by truly understanding the essence of blood could one dare to say that they could see through the rules of blood. Therefore, if the mother of Bloodbath's subordinates did not bleed like a river, how could they master the blood law rune? However, this old man actually spoke to the mother of Bloodbath like an old monk hanging himself. The mother of Bloodbath stepped forward with a playful expression on its face. Hee hee, you called me a little girl? The black-robed, white-haired elder had long known that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce didn't have a king-class expert. Although he didn't know how this strange masked woman with dark patterns of flowing clouds had discovered him, he didn't know what to do. But even if they found out, what could they do? They were just a bunch of trash. The black-robed elder's face was full of mockery. He looked at Lin Yuan, Listen, and the mother of Bloodbath as though they were three fun toys. Your ears aren't good at such a young age. Could it be that you're not a little girl, but a little sissy in women's clothing? Lin Yuan originally wanted to tell the mother of Bloodbath not to kill so easily. However, since the old man had spoken like this, Lin Yuan couldn't stop the mother of Bloodbath anymore. After all, dignity had always been the top priority for experts. The old man's words had obviously touched the mother of Bloodbath's bottom line. At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath suddenly laughed. However, that pleasant voice was filled with an extremely evil flavor. The frequency of this laughter was faintly like the hissing of a spider Fae when it was hunting for food. The black-robed, white-haired elder felt a chill all over his body, for some reason, after hearing the mother of Bloodbath's laughter. Goosebumps immediately covered his whole body, and even the age spots on his face were uneven because of the goosebumps. An inexplicable sense of crisis appeared in the elder's heart, and he shouted, Blood-toothed cricket, kill this woman with the blood-poisoned thorn. The blood-toothed cricket was only the size of half a palm, and its entire body was blood-red. However, its blood-red body was covered with black patches and brownish-green thorns, making it very ugly. The blood-toothed cricket's blood-red body was covered with black patches and brownish-green thorns, making it very ugly. When the blood-toothed cricket heard the old man's instructions, it stomped its powerful hind legs and shot toward the mother of Bloodbath. At the same time, two fangs formed by blood energy formed in front of the mother of Bloodbath. The front end of the fangs formed by blood energy also carried green venom that emitted a dark black light. At that moment, the aura that the mother of Bloodbath had been restraining penetrated through its body and dispersed the blood fangs formed by the blood-toothed cricket's blood poison thorn in one fell swoop. A kind of monarch's aura radiated from the mother of Bloodbath's body. However, this monarch's aura was only controlled by the mother of Bloodbath within the range of this room. At the same time, this monarch's aura emitted a kind of evil coldness. It was as if the bright room had instantly turned into a dark crypt for spiders to hunt. The blood-toothed cricket landed on the ground from mid-air and twitched violently. A blood-red luster flickered on the surface of its body, and a willpower similar to blood suddenly appeared on the blood-toothed cricket's body. Hee hee, this fantasy breed blood-toothed cricket is really compatible with this blood poison willpower rune. It's just that it's really interesting to let a fantasy breed insect attack me with a blood ability. As soon as the mother of Bloodbath's voice fell, the blood poison willpower energy was directly stripped from the blood-toothed cricket's body. It then slowly fused into the mother of Bloodbath's body. The mother of Bloodbath's body rippled with a blood-red luster. With the blood poison willpower extracted from the blood-toothed cricket's body, it fell from a fantasy breed to a Diamond 3/Legend Fae. The black-robed, white-haired old man suddenly exclaimed, "A suzerain/myth breed Fae." The old man's voice was full of bewilderment and fear, and even his voice was trembling. The mother of Bloodbath stepped toward the blood-toothed cricket that had fallen to the ground and said, "You have some knowledge. You even know about law stripping and system control." When the black-robed old man made the blood-toothed cricket attack the mother of Bloodbath, Listen's heart skipped a beat. This old man was simply too familiar to listen. This old man was the third leader of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, Fei Qianxiong. Third update asking for votes, end of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.